Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Reborn in Highschool DxD as a Lucifuge. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 61, Ria's Shock. Ria-senpai, are you troubled by something? Roy asked directly, noticing her melancholic expression. Rias replied with a forced smile, no, not at all. Don't worry, Roy-kun. In Ria's eyes, Roy was just a middle-class devil. She wouldn't burden him with her problems. Seeing her reluctance to share, Roy decided to change the subject. Well, if you don't want to talk about it, let's forget about those worries for now. How about we go on a date, he suggested, extending his hand with a gentle smile. A date? Rias blushed at Roy's bold invitation. No one had ever asked her out on a date before. After a moment of hesitation, Rias placed her hand in Roy's, a smile gracing her lips. Then I'll be in your care, Roy-kun. Roy eagerly pulled her along. Don't worry, Ria-senpai. Leave it to me. He led Rias out of the occult research club in a hurry. As soon as they left, two figures appeared in the clubroom. Era, it seems only Roy-kun can make Rias happy, Akino observed with a teasing smile. Indeed, Kaneko agreed with a nod. It's just a shame that Roy-kun can't really change anything, Akino sighed. Kaneko remained silent. Meanwhile, Roy and Rias strolled through the bustling streets, enjoying their date. No girl, not even a devil, could resist the allure of shopping. Rias completely forgot about her engagement woes as she explored the town with Roy. They shopped, savored delicious snacks, visited a lantern festival at a shrine, and enjoyed each other's company. Their date ended late in the evening. As they walked back, Rias looked at Roy with a radiant smile. Roy-kun, thank you for today. Her smile hadn't faded since their date began. This was the happiest and most memorable day she had experienced in a long time. You're welcome. I had a wonderful time too, Ria-senpai, Roy replied. You can call me by my name, Roy-kun, Rias said with a playful wink. Roy's smile widened. Then you can call me Roy too, Rias. Roy, Rias said, her voice filled with warmth. Yes? Rias, if you're ever troubled by something, just stay true to your own feelings, Roy advised. Rias paused, then smiled. Yes, I understand. Then I'll see you tomorrow, Rias. They had arrived back at the occult research club. Yes, see you tomorrow, Rias replied with a wave. Roy activated his teleportation magic and vanished. Stay true to my own feelings, huh? I understand, Rias murmured, a newfound resolve in her heart. Bucho, how was your date? Akino and Kaneko suddenly appeared before her. Rias blushed at the question. It was wonderful, she replied vaguely, then hurried into the clubroom. Akino, seeing Rias' reaction, knew that she must have had a great time. Era, Bucho must be very happy. Now I want to go on a date with Roy-kun too, Akino teased. Akino! Rias scolded. But Akino was unfazed. Era, Rias, are you trying to monopolize Roy-kun? That's not fair. Rias couldn't help but chuckle at Akino's relentless teasing and quickened her pace. Akino giggled, watching her go. Back at his castle, Roy decided it was time to return to the underworld. He needed to ask his sister, Graphia, about his awakened ability, and he also had to address Ria's situation. He gathered the girls and informed them of his plans to return to the underworld. The girls erupted in excited chatter. I wonder what Royonia-chan's sister is like, Nezuko said, curious about Graphia. Are we meeting the parents? Mitsuri stammered, her face flushed. The Kocho sisters were also a bit nervous about meeting Roy's sister for the first time. Don't worry. Although she may seem stern, she's actually very kind, Roy reassured them, patting Nezuko's head. His words eased their worries. Seiko and the others, having already met Graphia, were more relaxed. Roy activated the teleportation magic. They vanished in a flash of blue light. Underworld, the Lucifuge territory. A blue light filled the hall as Roy and his group materialized. Graphia stood before them, waiting for their arrival. "I'm home," Sis Roy greeted his sister with a smile. "Welcome home," Graphia replied, her expression stoic. Although she didn't smile, her happiness was evident. "By the way, let me introduce you." Roy introduced his servants to his sister. Although Graphia had met Seiko and the others before, they hadn't been properly acquainted. After the introductions, Graphia looked at Seiko with surprise. She had noticed Seiko's talent before, but she hadn't expected her to reach the peak of middle-class devil so quickly. She was even more astonished to see that Kane and the others were also at the peak of middle-class devil. Middle-class devils were considered the backbone of the underworld, let alone those at the peak of that rank. Even Riser Phoenix didn't have many middle-class devils in his peerage. Most of his servants were low-class devils, and he had only one high-class devil, Ubaluna, the Bomb Queen. "So, sis, what do you think of my peerage?" Roy asked with a hint of pride. "They're impressive," Graphia nodded in approval. Graphia then arranged rooms for the girls to rest, as it was already late. Roy accompanied Graphia to her room. "Sis, I have something to show you," Roy said with a mischievous grin, pulling her along. Only in front of his sister did Roy show this childish side of himself. "What is it?" Graphia asked curiously. "Look." Roy extended his hand, and an ice rose materialized in his palm. Graphia's eyes narrowed. "This is?" "Yes, it's my awakened devil ability." "Isn't it amazing?" Roy boasted. However, Graphia didn't seem surprised by the ice rose. "Eh? Sis, you don't seem surprised that I awakened an ability." "Well, your mother also awakened an ice-based ability." "But?" Graphia trailed off, and Roy asked curiously, "But what?" "Your mother was a direct descendant of one of the 72 pillars, which is why she awakened an ice ability." However, her ice ability wasn't very strong, Graphia explained. Roy finally understood why Graphia wasn't surprised. She assumed his ice ability would be similar to his mother's, not very potent. "But?" Roy smirked. He unleashed a surge of ice magic, coating the entire room in a thin layer of frost. He was deliberately suppressing his power, otherwise, the entire castle would have been frozen instantly. Graphia was taken aback by the sheer intensity of his ice magic. She hadn't paid close attention to Roy's strength earlier, assuming he had only recently reached middle-class devil. But now, she realized that Roy was already in high-class devil. Moreover, his ice magic was incredibly potent. His power had grown at an astonishing rate. Roy chuckled, seeing his sister's surprised expression. "By the way, sis, I have a favor to ask." Graphia recovered from her shock. "Just tell me. You're the heir to the Lucifuge clan. Well, I'd like you to approach the Gremory and Phoenix families." Roy explained his plan. He wanted Graphia to propose a rating game to the Gremory and Phoenix families. The winner of the rating game between Roy and Riser would become Ria's fiancé. For Rias? That seems appropriate, Graphia replied calmly. Roy chuckled, not denying his intentions. I'll speak to the Gremory and Phoenix families, but there's no guarantee they'll agree. Thank you, sis. Roy expressed his gratitude. He wasn't worried about their refusal. The current head of the Gremory clan doted on his daughter, Rias. And her brother, Sirzex Lucifer, the current Mao, also adored his little sister. Previously, they had no choice but to agree to Rias' engagement with Riser, whom she didn't love. But if there was an alternative, a way for the Gremory family to save face, they wouldn't object to letting Rias choose for herself. The next day, Graphia went to handle Roy's request. Roy returned to the human world with the girls. He still had to attend school. Perhaps due to Graphia's efficiency, Rias received news from her family that afternoon. Back in the underworld, Rias was puzzled when her brother, Surzex, informed her of a change in her engagement with Riser. But when she heard that Roy had challenged Riser to a rating game for her sake, she was deeply touched. She recalled their first date, her heart filled with warmth. However, worry soon crept in. In her eyes, Roy was only a middle-class devil. And his peerage was small. How could he defeat Riser, who was already an high-class devil? Ignoring her brother's further explanations, she activated a teleportation magic circle and returned to the human world. At Ko Academy, Rias rushed to Roy's classroom. In front of everyone, she dragged Roy away. The entire class, including the teacher, was stunned. They never expected Rias, who always maintained a dignified composure, to act so impulsively. Roy didn't resist as Rias pulled him along. They arrived at the Occult Research Club. Rias dragged Roy into a room, slammed the door shut, and pinned him against the wall. "Roy-kun, don't you think you owe me an explanation?" she demanded, her large eyes fixed on him. What do you want me to explain?" Roy asked innocently, feigning ignorance. Rias was not amused by his response. "Humph. The rating game challenge against Riser Phoenix, of course," she huffed, her cheeks puffed out. Since Rias had already brought it up, Roy dropped the act. He wrapped an arm around Rias and, with a swift motion, reversed their positions, pinning her against the wall instead. "Ah!" Rias yelped in surprise. "Do you really want to be engaged to that guy, Riser?" Roy asked, his voice low. "Of course not, but..." Roy cut her off. "No buts, Rias. Do you not believe in my strength? Or do you simply not like me?" Rias blushed. She couldn't deny her feelings for Roy. She had already been fond of him, and their date had only solidified those feelings. However, she wasn't easily swayed by his words. She focused her attention, trying to gauge Roy's power, but she couldn't see through him. How is this possible? Usually, one could only conceal their power from those of equal or lower rank. Could it be that Roy's strength? Rias stared at Roy in disbelief. "Yes, Rias. I'm an high-class devil now," Roy confirmed with a smile. Rias was stunned. Not long ago, she had celebrated Roy's breakthrough to middle-class devil. Now, just a few days later, he had already become an high-class devil. To achieve such rapid progress, rising from low-class to high-class devil within a few months, was practically a miracle in the underworld. No wonder she couldn't see through his power. Rias looked at Roy as if he were some kind of monster. Roy noticed her gaze and said with a hint of exasperation, "Hey, Rias, what's with that look?" Rias giggled, covering her mouth with her hand. But then, her expression turned worried. "Even though you've reached high-class devil, Roy, Riser has been in high-class devil for years. And your peerage." Rias trailed off, her concern evident. Roy understood her worries. Rating games were team battles. Individual strength was important, but the strength of one's peerage was equally crucial. Riser Phoenix had his immortality, the ability to be reborn from ashes, a truly troublesome ability. But Roy had awakened his ice magic. He was eager to test it against Riser's immortality. As for his peerage, there was no need to worry. Although he didn't have a queen yet, Nezuko and Mitsuri both possessed the strength of high-class devils. Together, they could even handle Riser's queen. And his other servants were also quite powerful. Roy had no reason to be concerned. "Don't worry, Rias. My servants are very strong. I'll show you after school. But for now, let's go on a date." Roy took Rias' hand and started running. "Eh? But Roy, aren't you skipping class?" Rias reminded him, though she was excited about the prospect of another date. "That doesn't matter," Roy replied. Skipping class wasn't a big deal, especially for devils. They spent the rest of the afternoon enjoying their date. That evening, Roy invited Rias, Akino, and Kaneko to his castle. Era, so this is where Roy-kun lives. It's quite impressive, Akino remarked, looking around the castle in awe. The castle had a classic exterior, but the interior was modern and cozy. "Rias, how about we move in with Roy-kun?" Aquino suggested, seemingly quite fond of the place. "Yes, it's quite lovely," Rias agreed. They both looked at Roy expectantly. "Ha, of course, you're welcome to stay here if you'd like," Roy replied. He wouldn't refuse their request. In fact, he welcomed it. "Come on, let's go inside. Everyone's waiting to welcome you." Roy led the three girls into the living room. Siko, Kane, and the others had prepared a welcome party, with various fruits and snacks laid out. "Welcome, Rias, Aquino, and Kaneko-chan." Siko greeted them warmly. "Welcome, Rias-senpai, Akeno-senpai, and Kaneko-san." Asia chimed in. Rias, Aquino, and Kaneko were delighted by the warm reception. They all introduced themselves, and the atmosphere became lively. Roy felt a bit sidelined. "Kaneko-chan, want to play?" Alice, ever energetic, approached Kaneko with the three little girls from the Butterfly Mansion. "Royoni-chan bought me the latest game console. Want to try it?" she asked, showing off the handheld device. "The latest game console?" Normally, Kaneko, with her stoic personality, wouldn't play with children she had just met. But the allure of the new game console was too strong to resist. Alice dragged Kaneko away to play. Era, Roy's home is quite lively, isn't it?" Aquino remarked, watching Kaneko play with Alice and the little girls. The Occult Research Club had always been just the three of them, making it seem a bit deserted compared to this. Where did Roy find so many servants? He only had a few last time, Rias wondered with a hint of envy. When they dealt with the stray devil incident, Roy didn't have this many servants, and their strength was relatively low. Now, he had a whole entourage of powerful individuals. Rias was envious. In all these years, she had only formed contracts with Aquino and Kaneko. Aquino also looked at Roy curiously, sharing Rias' question. "Hee, that's a secret," Roy chuckled, refusing to divulge his methods. Rias was disappointed. But then, she realized it was natural for him to keep such matters private. Roy noticed her disappointment and whispered in her ear, "If you become my fiancé, I'll tell you." Rias blushed at his words. She was still quite shy about such matters. Roy found her reaction amusing. Era, Roy-kun, if I'm not mistaken, you don't have a queen yet, do you?" Aquino suddenly remarked. "Yes, I don't have a queen yet," Roy confirmed. "That's not good. Riser Phoenix's queen is Yubaluna, the bomb queen. She's incredibly powerful," Aquino pointed out. Rias nodded in agreement. "Then how about I become Roy-kun's queen?" Aquino offered with a smile. Rias' face darkened. She had just been envying Roy's impressive peerage. Now, both of her servants were about to defect. But considering that Roy indeed lacked a queen, she couldn't object. She remained silent, her expression sullen. Roy, amused by Rias' reaction, struggled to contain his laughter. "That's an excellent suggestion," he said, playing along. Right? Aquino chimed in with a playful wink. "But if Aquino-senpai joins my peerage, poor Rias will be heartbroken," Roy added, teasingly. "I won't," Rias retorted defensively. "Really?" Roy and Aquino burst into laughter. Rias realized they were teasing her. "Aquino," she whined. Era, Rias' reactions are just too amusing." Aquino giggled, leaning against Roy's shoulder. Rias sighed. She couldn't handle Aquino at all. "Don't worry, you two. Nezuko and Mitsuri can both unleash the power of high-class devils. The bomb queen is nothing to fear," Roy reassured them, patting Nezuko's head. Eh? Rias and Aquino looked at Nezuko and Mitsuri in surprise. They hadn't expected them to be so powerful. Nezuko and Mitsuri puffed out their chests proudly, enjoying the attention. "Nezuko-chan, Mitsuri-san, show them your devil wings," Roy instructed. "Okay." With a flap of their wings, Nezuko and Mitsuri soared into the air, circling the living room. Rias and Aquino were stunned. They had never seen such powerful aura from middle-class devils before. Amazing! Rias murmured, her eyes wide with admiration. It seems Roy-kun has a knack for finding talented individuals, Aquino commented with a hint of envy. Roy simply smiled mysteriously. He wouldn't reveal his secrets. After the lively welcome party, Roy spent some quality time with each of the girls. The next day, Roy went to school as usual. Rias and Aquino also returned to the Occult Research Club. They couldn't skip class like Roy. At the clubroom, Rias and Aquino discussed Roy's rating game challenge against Riser Phoenix. Aquino, do you think Roy can win? Rias asked, her voice laced with worry. It's hard to say. Riser has been an high-class devil for many years, and his peerage is quite strong. But Roy's growth rate is astonishing. And his servants. Aquino trailed off, remembering the power displayed by Nezuko and Mitsuri. Even so, I'm still worried, Rias admitted. She couldn't bear the thought of Roy losing and being forced to give up on her. Rias, you should have more faith in Roy-kun, Aquino reassured her. He's not one to take on a challenge he can't win. Rias nodded, though her worries lingered. Meanwhile, Roy was enjoying his school life, teasing Ike Kirio and flirting with the other girls. He also continued to train his peerage, guiding them in mastering breathing styles and honing their demonic powers. The rating game against Riser Phoenix was approaching, and Roy was confident in his victory. Chapter 62. Bathhouse Shenanigans. The rating game is scheduled for 10 days from now, Rias announced. Although I'm not sure how much it will help, I'd like to invite everyone to a training camp. It's the least I can do. Despite her trust in Roy, Rias still felt compelled to contribute somehow, hence the invitation to train together. Roy naturally wouldn't refuse her offer. No problem, he agreed. Then let's depart tomorrow. I'll arrange for everyone to be excused from school, Rias said, pleased with his response. 10 days wasn't enough time for significant improvement, but it would be a nice change of pace. Early the next morning, Rias led Roy and the others to her secret training grounds. They carried large bags and luggage, looking more like they were going on vacation than to a training camp. Wow, Kaneko-chan is so strong! Alice exclaimed, running after Kaneko. Amazing! Amazing! The three little girls from the Butterfly Mansion echoed Alice's sentiment. The four Lolas surrounded Kaneko, their eyes filled with admiration. Kaneko carried a massive pack, several times her size, without a change in her expression as they climbed the mountain path. Siko, Shinobu, Kane, and the other girls also carried heavy packs. This was part of Rias' weight training regimen. Everyone except the Lolas had to carry a load, even Shizuka and Asia, the healers, though their burdens were lighter. To Rias' surprise, none of them seemed to struggle. In fact, they carried their loads with ease. Aquino noticed something peculiar. Era, how interesting. Their breathing seems a bit unusual, she observed. Indeed. Perhaps it's some kind of special magic, Rias speculated. Haha, it's not magic. It's just a breathing technique, Roy explained. He didn't intend to keep breathing styles a secret. Thanks to their mastery of breathing styles, the girls could handle this level of physical training without any strain. Even Shizuka and Rika, who had only recently learned it, were doing fine. Breathing technique? Rias and Aquino echoed, unfamiliar with the concept. After all, this was an era of magic. It's just a training method. I can teach you if you're interested, Roy offered. Rias and Aquino readily accepted, intrigued by this new technique. They soon arrived at Rias' secret training grounds. Wow, it's beautiful. It really is. Asia and the others were instantly captivated by the scenery. It was a vast estate with lush greenery, gardens, mountains, a lake, a paradise for relaxation. Alright, let's begin our training once we're settled in, Rias announced. They entered the estate, unpacked their belongings, and changed into their training attire. They gathered at the training grounds, a spacious area large enough for intense combat. I've already taught you the basics of magic manipulation, so let's jump right into sparring today, Roy declared, then turned to Akino. "Akino-senpai, would you mind being their opponent?" "No problem," Akino replied with a smile. She transformed into her shrine maiden attire and flew to the center of the training grounds. Roy turned to Siko and the others with a grin. "So, who wants to challenge Akino first? Just a friendly reminder, she's an high-class devil." As soon as he finished speaking, Siko stepped forward. "I'll go first," she declared, her eyes locked on Akino, filled with fighting spirit. Roy shrugged. He had expected Siko to be the first one. "All right, Siko, you're up first. Both of you, give it your all. Don't hold back. We have Asia and Shizuka here for healing, and Rias and I will intervene if necessary," Roy instructed. He wanted them to fight without reservation. There was no point in holding back during a sparring match. Rias frowned but didn't object. "Hee, in that case, I'll go all out," Akino chuckled from her position in the air. "Please do," Siko replied, drawing her sword. The battle was about to begin. Siko made the first move. Thunder breathing, first form, thunderclap and flash. She transformed into a golden lightning bolt, charging towards Akino with incredible speed. "So fast. Is this the power of breathing styles?" Rias gasped, astonished by Siko's speed. Akino, however, remained calm and composed. She raised her right hand and shouted, "Lightning strike!" Rumble! Countless bolts of lightning descended from the sky, targeting Siko. Even with her speed, Siko couldn't evade the barrage. She had to change tactics. Thunder breathing, first form, thunderclap and flash eightfold. Siko's body crackled with golden lightning, and she vanished, transforming into a streak of lightning, weaving through the incoming attacks. This was a technique developed by Zenitsu Agatsuma. With Roy's help, Siko had mastered it. And her version was even more potent than Zenitsu's. In the original story, Zenitsu could only unleash up to 8 consecutive attacks. But with her devil physique, Siko could execute even more. She became a golden blur, circling Akino relentlessly. Akino struggled to keep up with Siko's speed. Her playful smile vanished, replaced by a serious expression. She had initially assumed Siko was just an ordinary middle-class devil, easily defeated. But Siko proved to be a formidable opponent. Alice and the other Lolas cheered for Siko. "Sikone-san is amazing. Go, Sikone-san. Sikone-san will win." Siko continued to evade the lightning strikes while closing in on Akino. She noticed that as she got closer to Akino, the number of lightning strikes decreased. Is she afraid of hitting herself? Siko wondered. This was her chance. Thunder breathing, fourth form, distant thunder. Siko's body erupted with lightning, and she shot upwards like a golden projectile. She reached Akino in an instant. Their eyes met, and Siko noticed that Akino wasn't panicking. Instead, she had a sly smile, as if she had anticipated this. Lightning flash! Akino shouted. A torrent of lightning erupted from her body, engulfing Siko. Not good. Siko realized she had fallen for Akino's trap. The decrease in lightning strikes as she approached had been deliberate. Akino had lured her closer to unleash a powerful attack. Despite the overwhelming lightning, Siko remained calm. She spread her devil wings, hovering in mid-air. She sheathed her sword, assuming a Iato stance. The lightning around her vanished, seemingly converging into her sword. Thunder breathing, thunder cutter. This was a technique Siko had developed by enhancing her Iato slash. It was far more powerful than a regular Iato slash. Her sword crackled with lightning, as if she were wielding pure electricity. With a flash of golden light, she slashed forward, cleaving through Akino's lightning attack. The torrent of electricity vanished instantly. Akino was stunned. She hadn't held back at all. That was her full power. Yet, Siko had effortlessly countered it. Rias, watching from below, was equally astonished. She couldn't believe Siko, a middle-class devil, could hold her own against Akino, an high-class devil. Only Roy knew that although Siko was powerful, she was still slightly weaker than Akino, the priestess of thunder. Against a common high-class devil, Siko could undoubtedly win. But Akino wielded the devastating power of lightning. As expected, after unleashing her thunder cutter, Siko was panting heavily. Having used thunderclap and flash multiple times and then her strongest technique, she was exhausted. Roy appeared beside Siko, supporting her as she landed. "Well done, Siko," he praised with a smile. Siko smiled back, though a hint of regret lingered in her eyes. "But I still lost." "Don't worry about it." "You were amazing," Roy reassured her, giving her a thumbs up. Indeed, Siko-san was truly impressive. "If we were at the same level, I would have lost," Akino admitted. If they had been equal in strength, Akino might have been defeated in an instant. Siko looked at Akino with renewed fighting spirit. The two women, both wielders of lightning, seemed to share a mutual respect. "All right, Akino and Siko, take a break." Next, Roy turned to Kaneko. "Kaneko-chan, would you like to spar?" "You can choose your opponent." Kaneko looked around and ultimately chose Nezuko. She noticed that Nezuko was the only one without a sword. As a rook, Kaneko primarily relied on her fists in combat, so she chose Nezuko, who didn't seem to use weapons. Roy and Rias exchanged amused glances. It seemed Kaneko had been playing games with Alice when Roy introduced Nezuko and Mitsuri, so she was unaware that Nezuko possessed the strength of an high-class devil. "All right, Nezuko versus Kaneko it is," Roy announced, then whispered to Nezuko, "Remember, no demonization." "Okay," Nezuko nodded obediently. The two girls stepped into the arena and began their hand-to-hand combat. The sight of two petite girls exchanging powerful blows was somewhat surreal. In the end, Kaneko lost. Nezuko's strength was simply overwhelming, even without resorting to her demonization. Roy's servants are truly remarkable. But a rating game isn't won solely by the strength of one's peerage, Rias commented, a hint of envy in her voice. She couldn't help but admire Roy's powerful servants. "Oh? Rias, are you implying that I, the master, am lacking in strength?" Roy chuckled, recognizing the underlying message in her words. "Perhaps we should test that." Rias grinned, accepting the challenge. They both entered the arena. "Rias, attack me with all you've got," Roy said, gesturing for her to make the first move. "Then I won't hold back." Rias unleashed her crimson demonic power, her hair swirling around her. "Ha!" she shouted, launching a crescent-shaped blast of black and red energy towards Roy. Rias' power of destruction was renowned for its ability to annihilate anything, a truly formidable power. However, Roy simply sidestepped the attack with ease. "Too slow," he commented casually. Rias, provoked, unleashed a barrage of destruction magic. "Rias, your attacks are a bit too straightforward, don't you think?" Roy taunted. Indeed, both Rias and Akino had somewhat limited attack patterns. Akino's lightning attacks were direct and lacked variety. There were countless individuals who used lightning as a weapon, such as Enel from One Piece, who wielded the Garo Garo Nomi, the Rumble Rumble fruit. Enel had developed a wide array of powerful techniques, such as 30 million volt Hino, 30 million volt El Thor, 200 million volt Amaru, max 200 million volt Vari, and Rego. Compared to Enel's diverse and devastating lightning attacks, Akino's techniques seemed rather lackluster. The same could be said for Rias. "Rias, let me show you how to use your magic properly," Roy declared, no longer dodging. He reached out with his hand. Secret art, ice mirror reflection. He conjured a mirror of ice, and Ria's destruction magic was instantly reflected back at her. "What?" Rias exclaimed, surprised. She frantically dodged her own reflected attack. But that wasn't all. Secret art, ice fong. Roy conjured several ice spikes that erupted from the ground around Rias, encasing her in ice. The girls were amazed by his display of power and technique. "Amazing!" Akino gasped, her eyes wide with awe. His elegant moves and overwhelming power were far beyond her simple lightning attacks. "But is Rias-senpai alright?" Despite her astonishment, Akino was still concerned about Rias. She's fine, Roy reassured her. He hadn't used his full power. Rias should be able to break free from this level of ice with ease. As if to prove his point. Crack! Crack! The massive ice sculpture began to crack, and Rias emerged, her body radiating black and red demonic energy. Achoo! Rias shivered, her arms wrapped around herself. She was clearly freezing. Akino glared at Roy and quickly wrapped a coat around Rias. Rias, are you all right? I'm fine, Rias replied, her voice trembling. Sorry, Rias, Roy apologized, realizing he had gone a bit overboard. He had developed many new techniques recently and couldn't resist showing them off. Roy-senpai, that was mean. Kaneko chided. It's okay. I was just too weak, Rias said, a hint of dejection in her voice. She was disappointed by her easy defeat but also impressed by Roy's strength and the elegance of his techniques. With the sparring session over, Rias suggested they go to the bathhouse. Roy was alone in the men's bath, as he was the only male student. The women's bath was nearby, and he could hear their cheerful chatter and laughter. Chapter 63, This Morning. In the women's bath, Rias sat in the water, staring blankly at the surface, lost in thought. Rias, what's wrong? Akino asked, interrupting her contemplation. How strong do you think Roy is? Rias wondered aloud. I don't know how strong Roy-kun is, but I'm sure he can defeat Riser Phoenix, Akino reassured her with a smile. Rias' eyes lit up. Yes, you're right. Then Rias will become Roy-kun's fiancé, Akino teased. Rias blushed but didn't deny it. Meanwhile, Roy lay in the men's bath, bored, his eyes closed. Suddenly, the door opened. Roy looked up and saw Akino entering. Akino-senpai, what are you doing here? He asked, surprised. Era, I thought Roy-kun might be lonely all by himself, so I came to join you, Akino replied, approaching him. Roy sighed. He wasn't some incompetent protagonist from a light novel. But this clearly wasn't the right time to devour Akino. He could only express his frustration with a sigh. But then, he thought, if I can't devour her, there are other things I can do. Back in the women's bath, Rias noticed Akino's absence. Kaneko, have you seen Akino? No, I haven't, Kaneko replied, engrossed in playing with Alice and the others. I saw Akino leave earlier, Siko informed them. Oh, she left? Rias nodded, but a sense of unease settled in her heart. The next day, Roy fulfilled his promise to teach Rias and the others breathing styles. Akino-senpai excels at manipulating lightning, so thunder breathing would be most suitable for her. Siko, would you mind teaching her? Roy delegated the task to Siko. No problem, Siko readily agreed. After their sparring match, the two had become good friends. Siko was the perfect teacher for Akino. Akino had no objections either. Kaneko-chan is skilled in close combat, so stone breathing, which enhances strength and defense, would be ideal for her. Yes, thank you, Roy-senpai, Kaneko replied gratefully. Kaneko had been struggling to increase her strength, as she was constantly suppressing her Nikomata powers. She was delighted to learn a new method to become stronger. Now, for Rias, which breathing style would suit her best? Roy pondered. Rias usually relied on her power of destruction in combat. Rias, why don't you choose for yourself? Roy decided to let her make the decision and explained the characteristics of each breathing style. After listening to his explanation, Rias asked, which breathing style do you use, Roy? Roy paused, then replied, I use water breathing. Rias smiled. Then I'll learn water breathing too. Roy was speechless but agreed nonetheless. Siko taught Akino thunder breathing, while Roy instructed Rias and Kaneko. The other girls sparred with each other to hone their skills. A week passed. 3 days remained until the rating game against Riser Phoenix. That evening, Rias addressed everyone. Everyone, I assume you don't have familiars yet. I've contacted a familiar master. We can go capture familiars tonight. Rias was doing everything she could to help them become stronger. Familiars? Kane and the others were curious. Yes. Look. Rias extended her hand. Poof. After a puff of smoke, a small imp appeared, flapping its wings. This is my familiar, Rias explained with a smile. Then, with another puff of smoke, the imp transformed into a beautiful girl with black hair. Wow! Amazing! She's so cute! Asia and the others were amazed by the transformation. This is my familiar. Akino summoned her familiar, a small goblin with no distinctive features. This is Shiro. Kaneko summoned her familiar, a small white kitten that didn't seem very combat capable. It seemed more like a pet. For devils, familiars are very important. They can assist their masters, relay messages, track targets, scout, and much more. Rias explained the various uses of familiars. Let's go then. Asia was eager to capture a cute familiar. Alright, everyone gather around, Rias said with a smile. Once everyone was ready, Rias activated a magic circle, and they vanished. Underworld, the familiar forest. A crimson magic circle appeared, and Roy, Rias, and the others emerged. This is the familiar forest. We all captured our familiars here, Rias explained, looking around. The sky was a dark crimson, and strange trees grew all around them. Eerie sounds echoed through the forest, creating an unsettling atmosphere. Even Alice, usually cheerful and energetic, clung to Roy's clothes nervously, afraid to wander off. Good evening, everyone, a voice suddenly boomed, startling the girls. Welcome to the familiar forest. I am the legendary familiar master. A skinny old man with a backpack stood on a branch, looking down at them. Familiar master? Asia and the others looked at the old man curiously. Indeed. And tonight is a full moon, the perfect time to capture familiars. The familiar master declared, striking a pose. Follow me, and you'll all find the perfect familiars. Roy rolled his eyes at the old man's theatrics. He's an expert on familiars, Akino explained. Roy was skeptical. In the original story, it seemed he had only managed to find a familiar for Asia. Now, what kind of familiars are you looking for? Strong? Agile? Poisonous? The familiar master enthusiastically described various types of familiars, confident in his extensive knowledge. I want a cute familiar. Are there any dog-like familiars? How about butterfly familiars? It would be best if it could fly. I want. The girls chimed in with their preferences, each request reflecting their personalities. Ha ha ha. Leave it all to me, the familiar master declared. Let's go. He led them deeper into the forest. Despite his conceit and rambling, he lived up to his title as a familiar master. He was incredibly knowledgeable about various familiars and knew where to find rare ones. They encountered many familiars along the way, but most were common and ordinary. The cute ones were too weak to be of much help. The stronger ones were often hideous, and the girls weren't interested. Just like the one before them now. The familiar master led them to a lake. In this lake lives a water spirit, Undine. Ooh! Undine is about to appear. The familiar master pointed excitedly towards the center of the lake. A gentle light flickered, and a muscular figure slowly rose from the water. Ha! A buff woman with bulging muscles turned towards them and roared, her imposing aura filling the air. Just as I expected. Roy sighed inwardly. You're in luck. That's Undine. The familiar master declared, crossing his arms with a smug grin. Shinobu and the others were less than thrilled by the muscular, Amazonian Undine. Only Asia seemed eager. Her eyes are so clear. She must have a kind heart. Asia, you said you wanted a cute familiar. Let's skip this one, Roy said, trying to dissuade her. He didn't want such a brawny woman in his household. Ah, that's too bad. Asia reluctantly agreed. The familiar master led them onward. Wait, look over there, he suddenly exclaimed, pointing towards a branch. They all looked in the direction he was pointing and saw a small blue dragon perched on the branch. It's a dragon. So cute. Asia and the others were instantly smitten with the adorable dragon. That's a sprite dragon, a young dragon that uses blue lightning, the familiar master explained. If you want to catch it, do it now. It'll be much harder once it grows up. It seems quite promising, Rias commented, also impressed by the dragon. Roy, however, disliked the blue dragon. He remembered from the original story that it was quite lecherous. He wouldn't allow such a creature into his home. Just then, the dragon suddenly flew towards them. As it approached Roy, it unleashed a bolt of blue lightning. Roy smirked, effortlessly deflecting the attack and swatting the dragon away. The small dragon was no match for Roy's strength and was sent flying. Wait! The familiar master tried to stop it, but it was too late. Sprite dragons are usually only interested in pure maidens, he explained. That one must have taken a liking to this young lady. He pointed at Asia. And male dragons are very hostile towards other males, which is why it attacked this young man. The girls finally understood. The dragon had attacked Roy because it was attracted to Asia and saw Roy as a rival. But thanks to Roy's swat, it was gone, and they couldn't retrieve it now. They all looked at Roy with exasperation. Don't worry, Asia. We might find an even cuter familiar later, Roy said, trying to comfort her. Okay, Asia replied, no longer dwelling on the lost dragon. They continued their search, but they couldn't find any suitable familiars. Let's call it a day, Rias decided. It was getting late, and they could continue their search tomorrow. They returned to the estate. The girls were disappointed that they hadn't captured any familiars. Roy thought for a moment, then opened his system interface. Although no new worlds had appeared, he noticed that he had gained another travel attempt. His eyes lit up. Among the previously available worlds was the world of Pokemon. This was perfect for their current situation. If there was one world teeming with potential familiars, it was the Pokemon world. There were countless Pokemon with incredible potential and diverse abilities. Most importantly, there were many adorable ones. Tomorrow, I'll take them to the Pokemon world to catch familiars, Roy decided. He turned to the girls with a mysterious smile. Get some rest, everyone. Tomorrow, I'll take you to a place where you can all find the familiars you desire. Really? Of course. Roy answered their questions without hesitation. But is there really such a place? Rias wondered. The familiar forest was widely considered the best place in the underworld to find familiars. Was there anywhere better? Don't worry. There is. And Rias, you can catch one too, Roy assured her. We can too? Rias was surprised. Of course. Rias and the others already had familiars, but Pokemon didn't require contracts to be captured. The girls went to bed, filled with anticipation for the next day. The next morning, Roy greeted Rias. Good morning, Roy. Good morning, Rias. Chapter 64, Pokemon World. Is everyone ready? Roy asked, looking at the girls gathered in the hall of the estate. Early that morning, Roy had instructed them to pack some essentials, as they would be camping outdoors in the Pokemon world to catch Pokemon. They could buy camping gear there, but some items had to be brought from their own world. Ready, the girls replied in unison. Rias, you seem to be in good spirits today. Is it because of last night's visit? Aquino teased, alluding to Rias' nighttime rendezvous with Roy. That's not true. Rias blushed. Aquino giggled, enjoying Rias' flustered reaction. How interesting. Perhaps I should pay Roy-kun a visit tonight as well, she mused with a playful smile. Absolutely not. Rias declared, her hands on her hips. Aquino laughed at her serious expression. Alright, Rias, Aquino, are you two ready? Roy interjected, seeing their playful banter. Yes, we're ready. They replied in unison, glancing at each other. Then let's depart. Roy snapped his fingers with a grin. A white light enveloped them, and they vanished. Pokemon World. Roy and the girls materialized in a dense forest. Where are we? This is completely different from the underworld. Is this the human world? The girls looked around curiously. This isn't the underworld or the human world. It's the world of Pokemon, Roy explained briefly. Now, let's head to town to buy some supplies, then we'll go catch some Pokemon. The girls readily agreed. Rias and Aquino, though puzzled by their surroundings, didn't voice their questions. They followed the path towards the nearest town. Kaneko-chan, come look. There's a caterpillar. Alice exclaimed, pulling Kaneko towards a bush where she had found a caterpie with the three little girls from the butterfly mansion. Kaneko looked at the caterpie with disgust. How repulsive. The other girls also gathered around to observe the creature. That's a big caterpillar. It's so ugly. It's quite plump. I wonder if it's edible. The girls chattered excitedly about the caterpie. Roy's lips twitched. Someone actually wanted to eat the caterpie. He saw that it was Shizuka who had made the comment. It seemed Shizuka had become quite passionate about cooking lately, wanting to turn everything into ingredients. Looking at the terrified caterpie squirming under the girls' scrutiny, an idea struck Roy. Shinobu-san, Kane-san, would you two like to make it your familiar? He asked with a mischievous grin. Eek! Shinobu and Kane shrieked in unison. No! Absolutely not, they both exclaimed, shaking their heads vigorously. Are you sure? Their evolved form is quite beautiful, Roy tempted them. The two girls shook their heads even more frantically. Look over there. Roy pointed towards a flower patch behind a large tree. The girls followed his gaze. Several large butterflies danced among the flowers. They were Butterfree, the evolved form of caterpie. Butterfree had a dark purple body and large white wings with black veins. Unlike real butterflies, they only had 4 legs, which were a pale turquoise color. They were beautiful and somewhat adorable. Wow! Such beautiful butterflies! They're so cute! I want to catch one! The girls were captivated by the Butterfree's graceful appearance. Roy smiled, pleased with their reaction. They're quite lovely, aren't they? Yes. I've decided to make one my familiar. What do you think, Nei-san? Shinobu asked Kane, clearly smitten with the Butterfree. I agree. I love these butterflies too, Kane replied, her eyes filled with admiration. Hee, if I told you those butterflies evolved from caterpillars, would you still like them? Roy teased. Not just Shinobu and Kane, but all the girls were surprised. Such beautiful butterflies evolved from caterpillars? They couldn't believe it, though they didn't doubt Roy's words. Kane and Shinobu looked at the squirming caterpie with mixed emotions. Did they really have to catch a caterpillar as a familiar? Although it's better to raise a familiar from a young age, I suppose you can just catch the butterflies, Roy relented, seeing their conflicted expressions. Shinobu and Kane sighed in relief. They had been worried that Roy would force them to take the caterpie as their familiars. But how do we capture them? Shinobu asked eagerly. It's simple. Just defeat them. Defeat them? Those butterflies don't seem very strong. Don't underestimate them. Those are Butterfree, Bug and Flying-type Pokemon, Roy explained. They have useful support moves like Stun Spore, Sleep Powder, and Poison Powder. If trained well, they can even affect high-class devils. He briefly explained Butterfree's abilities. Although not particularly powerful, Butterfree were still valuable Pokemon. Rias, Aquino, and Kaneko were surprised. Their familiars were purely functional and couldn't be used in combat. They hadn't expected such beautiful butterflies to be capable of affecting high-class devils. This piqued their interest in Pokemon. Shinobu and Kane, after hearing Roy's explanation, were eager to try their hand at capturing Butterfree. They both attacked. The Butterfree weren't very high-leveled, and within moments, nearly 10 of them were defeated. Now, choose one each to become your familiar, Roy said with a smile. Shinobu and Kane carefully selected the 2 Butterfree with the greatest potential and formed contracts with them. Since the Butterfree had been defeated by them, the contract formation was smooth and effortless. Royoni-chan, I want a Butterfree too. Alice pleaded, tugging at Roy's clothes and pointing at the defeated Butterfree. The other girls also seemed interested. Even Rias and Aquino were tempted. Such beautiful and capable familiars were rare in the underworld. Don't worry, Alice. There are many other beautiful and powerful Pokemon here, Roy reassured her, patting her head. The girls abandoned the idea of capturing a Butterfree for now. They arrived at the town. It was Pallet Town. To Roy's surprise, this was the hometown of Ash Ketchum, the protagonist of the Pokemon anime. But he didn't dwell on it. He led the girls on a shopping spree, purchasing various supplies. He had obtained the money by selling some magic items. The cultural differences between the two worlds were vast, so even a simple magic item could fetch an exorbitant price here. After a day of shopping, they had acquired almost everything they needed. Most importantly, they bought Pokédexes. These devices contained information on almost every Pokemon, including their habitats. This would allow them to target specific Pokemon. Roy and his group left Pallet Town, planning to camp in the Viridian Forest that night and search for suitable Pokemon. They found a flat grassy area beside a small river. Roy decided to set up camp there. He sent Seiko, Asia, and a few others to gather ingredients while he and Yuriko, Rika, and the others set up the tents. By the time they finished setting up camp, Seiko and the others had returned. Roy noticed that Asia was carrying a Pikachu. Asia, where did you get that Pokemon? He asked curiously. I found it while picking fruits over there. It was injured, Asia explained, gently stroking the Pikachu. It's so cute. Asia-san, can I pet it? Alice asked, eager to touch the adorable creature. Asia handed the Pikachu to Alice. Asia-san, what's its name? Alice asked as she petted the Pikachu. Well, its name is Pikachu, Roy interjected, taking out his Pokédex and scanning the Pikachu. He then handed the Pokédex to Asia. The other girls gathered around to see. Pikachu was the most iconic Pokemon. Its adorable appearance was a favorite among girls. And it was quite powerful. In the original story, Ash had overcome many challenges with his Pikachu. The girls were smitten after reading Pikachu's information. Since Asia found it and healed it, she can have it as her familiar, Roy declared. The girls had no objections. Asia formed a contract with the Pikachu without hesitation. They were quite lucky. 3 of them had already found their ideal familiars on their first day. Just then, Shizuka, Aquino, and the others returned from their foraging expedition. Huff! It's so heavy! Shizuka exclaimed, setting down a large bag and wiping the sweat from her brow. Shizuka, what did you bring back? It can't be that heavy, can it? Hee, I found some good stuff. Shizuka replied with a proud grin. Look! She opened the bag, revealing several eggs the size of wash basins. Wow! Shizuka, where did you find these eggs? Saya asked in surprise. Over there, hee. Wait, these eggs. Roy felt a sense of familiarity. He quickly took out his Pokédex and scanned one of the eggs. They're Chansey eggs. This meant there was a Chansey nearby. Roy was excited. Chansey? Shizuka tilted her head, confused. Yes, Chansey. It's a rare wild Pokemon, Roy explained. Chansey were incredibly rare. It was said that those who encountered them would be blessed with good fortune. Chansey laid several eggs a day. These eggs were not only nutritious but also incredibly delicious. Even those with no appetite couldn't resist them. Moreover, consuming these eggs could heal injuries. Many people sought to capture Chansey for their nutritious eggs, but they were rarely seen. He hadn't expected Shizuka to stumble upon one. "Shizuka, quickly take me to where you found the eggs." "Your familiar awaits," Roy said eagerly. "Really?" Shizuka's eyes lit up. She led Roy to the location where she had found the eggs. However, there was no sign of Chansey. It seemed Chansey hadn't returned yet, or perhaps it had left for some reason. Roy and Shizuka searched the surrounding area. To their surprise, they found Chansey collapsed in a thicket, covered in blood and with several claw marks on its body. It seemed to have been attacked by other Pokemon. The world of Pokemon wasn't as peaceful as depicted in the anime. After a period of overhunting by humans seeking its eggs, Chansey had become incredibly rare. Moreover, other Pokemon also preyed on Chansey, which was another reason for their scarcity. "Shizuka, quickly heal it," Roy instructed. "Oh, okay." Shizuka rushed forward and used her healing magic on Chansey. Her healing abilities had improved significantly, and they were quite effective in treating external injuries like Chansey's. Within moments, Chansey regained consciousness. "Chansey, Chansey," Chansey chirped, its voice adorable. It looked at Shizuka with gratitude. Once Chansey's injuries were fully healed, it started chirping frantically, waving its arms anxiously. Shizuka, confused, looked at Roy. It seems it was being targeted by other Pokemon, and it's worried about its eggs, Roy deduced. Chansey must have led the attacking Pokemon away to protect its eggs. "Chansey, Chansey, Chansey," Chansey's cries became even more urgent. "Let's take it back to camp and return its eggs," Roy suggested. Perhaps understanding his words, Chansey followed them as they headed back to their campsite. Shizuka returned the eggs to Chansey. "Chansey, Chansey," Chansey chirped happily, cradling the 3 eggs. Its eyes were filled with motherly love. Could these be more than just ordinary eggs? Roy wondered. If they were just normal eggs, Chansey wouldn't be so worried. Unless, these were Chansey's children. If that was the case, then they had hit the jackpot. Roy wouldn't mind having more of these rare Pokemon. After a while, Chansey calmed down. It bowed to Shizuka, expressing its gratitude for saving its life. "Quick, Shizuka, ask it if it wants to be your familiar," Roy urged. "Ah, right." Shizuka asked Chansey, "Chansey, would you like to become my familiar?" "Chansey, Chansey." Chansey tilted its head, chirping. Although it didn't understand Shizuka's words, it sensed her intentions. After a moment of consideration, Chansey nodded. After all, this human had not only saved its life but also its children's. It had to agree. Chapter 65, Shocker. Saya catches this Pokemon. Seeing Chansey's nod of agreement, Shizuka beamed with joy. "Don't just stand there, quickly form the contract," Roy urged, chuckling at her delighted expression. Shizuka giggled, then initiated the contract ritual. "I'm so envious. Shizuka-ne-san found such a powerful familiar. This Pokemon is perfect for Shizuka-san. And Chansey is a very rare and helpful Pokemon." Rika, having checked the Pokédex, was filled with envy. "Really? Rika, let me see." Shizuka, though fond of Chansey, didn't know much about it. "Wow! It can lay eggs. Now we'll never run out of ingredients," Shizuka exclaimed, her eyes fixated on the egg-laying ability. She looked at Chansey curiously. Chansey, sensing her interest, held out an egg the size of a wash basin. "Wonderful! Thank you, Chansey." Shizuka took the egg, praising her new familiar. "Chansey, Chansey," Chansey chirped happily, glad to be of service to its new master. Shizuka then joined Siko, Akino, and the others in preparing dinner, carrying the egg with her. Although they only had one egg, its size was enough for everyone to have a taste. As described in the Pokédex, Chansey's egg was incredibly delicious. They were in for a treat. That night, Akino, true to her word, decided to pay Roy a visit. However, as she opened the tent flap, she found several girls already inside, including Rias. Akino was momentarily taken aback but didn't retreat. Era, it seems quite lively in here. Well then, I'll join in as well, she said with a playful smile, entering the tent and closing the flap behind her. Akino, there's no room for you here. Rias protested, glaring at her. Indeed, Roy was already flanked by Rias and Siko on one side, and Shizuka and Yuriko on the other. The small tent was packed. Era, but isn't there one spot left? Akino countered, crawling onto Roy's lap and looking at Rias triumphantly. Rias fumed with indignation. Sigh, this is going to be a long night, Roy lamented. The next day, Roy and the girls continued their search for Pokemon in the Viridian Forest. With the Pokédex, each girl had chosen their preferred Pokemon. Now, they just had to follow the locations indicated in the Pokédex and search for them. Of course, they wouldn't miss any other suitable Pokemon they encountered along the way. By midday, they had already found the Kanto starter Pokemon. Yuriko captured Charmander, Rika caught Bulbasaur, and Makomo obtained Squirtle. The Kanto starters were powerful Pokemon, and the three girls were thrilled with their new companions. They emerged from the forest and arrived at a vast lake with a sandy beach. Wow! A beach! This is amazing! Let's go swimming! It would be perfect with some beach umbrellas, lounge chairs, and iced juice. The girls were excited to discover such a beautiful beach. It was a secluded area with no one else around. The summer heat made it the perfect time for a swim. However, they needed some essential items to fully enjoy the beach. After much pleading from the girls, Roy reluctantly teleported to town to purchase the necessary supplies. When he returned, the girls were already swimming in the lake, clad in their swimsuits. They had asked Rias to open a portal to a shop so they could buy swimsuits together, as they were too embarrassed to ask Roy to buy them. Roy joined the girls, enjoying the beach and playing in the water. After a while, Roy got out of the water and lay under a beach umbrella, sipping iced juice. He noticed Kaneo sitting on a rock by herself, seemingly lost in thought. Curious, he walked over to her. He saw that Kaneo was facing a Psyduck. Psyduck was a Pokemon that resembled a platypus. It had a yellow body, tiny pupils, a flat bill, 3 black hairs on its head, and stubby limbs. It looked like a kappa. It also had a small tail and webbed feet. Its vacant expression made it quite adorable. Kaneo and the Psyduck stared at each other, seemingly engaged in a staring contest. Roy chuckled at the amusing sight. Quack! Startled by the sound, both Kaneo and the Psyduck turned to look at him. Ahem, sorry, carry on. Roy coughed awkwardly. Kaneo, however, continued to stare at him blankly. Kaneo, do you like this Psyduck? Roy asked, gently patting her head. Kaneo considered his question for a moment, then nodded. Then make it your familiar, Roy suggested. Kaneo's eyes lit up. She turned to the Psyduck and cast the contract magic. Roy was surprised that she didn't even ask for the Psyduck's consent. But to his surprise, the Psyduck accepted. Perhaps it was a connection between two vacant minds. Kaneo formed a contract with a Pokemon? Kane and Shinobu approached them. But this Pokemon seems a bit slow. Is it strong? Shinobu asked, observing the Psyduck with a dubious expression. Don't worry, Psyduck is quite powerful, Roy assured her. Normally, Psyduck wasn't very strong. But when it had a headache, it could unleash powerful psychic powers. It was a fascinating Pokemon. Moreover, its evolved form, Golduck, was quite impressive, shedding Psyduck's limitations and becoming a formidable Pokemon. Ah! Go away! Just as they were celebrating Kaneo's new familiar, Saya's scream echoed from the lakeshore. Roy turned to see a large red Magikarp chasing Saya, who was frantically trying to escape. The other girls, seeing that the Magikarp posed no threat, didn't intervene. They laughed, amused by Saya's panicked reaction. Roy also watched the scene with amusement. It was a Magikarp, known as the weakest Pokémon. Its only move was Splash, which had practically no offensive power. After a long chase, Saya finally remembered to run towards the shore. Huff, huff. You stupid fish. Making me look like a fool. I'll turn you into fish soup. Saya yelled, glaring at the Magikarp, which refused to leave her alone. She formed a magic bullet in her hand, ready to blast the Magikarp. Wait, Saya. Roy appeared beside her, stopping her attack. Why are you trying to kill it? Humph. It embarrassed me in front of everyone. I'll turn it into fish soup. Saya declared, her voice filled with anger. I thought it was quite amusing. Ahem, I don't think it was intentionally trying to scare you. It probably likes you, Roy said, accidentally revealing the truth before quickly changing the subject. The Magikarp in the water wagged its tail and bobbed its head, resembling a dog trying to appease its owner. It looked quite cute. But. Saya hesitated. Why don't you make it your familiar? Roy suggested. Saya was tempted. The Pokémon Roy had recommended so far were all quite powerful. But this fish doesn't seem very strong, she said, still hoping for a powerful familiar, as she wasn't skilled in combat herself. Well, Magikarp is indeed weak. You could even say it's extremely weak, Roy admitted. Saya's face darkened. So you introduce them to powerful Pokémon, and I get stuck with this weakling? She thought, feeling a bit aggrieved. Seeing her pout, Roy decided to stop teasing her. Magikarp is indeed very weak, with almost no offensive capabilities. But... He paused. But what? Saya asked eagerly. But when Magikarp evolves into Gyarados, it becomes incredibly powerful. Saya couldn't believe it. Really? Of course. Here, see for yourself. Roy handed her the Pokédex. Saya checked the Pokédex. It was true. When Magikarp evolved into Gyarados, it became incredibly powerful, capable of overwhelming most Pokémon. However, very few Magikarp successfully evolved into Gyarados. Magikarp were one of the most common Pokémon. But Gyarados were rarely seen, indicating the difficulty of evolution. Once evolved, however, Gyarados were incredibly strong. Their Hyper Beam could incinerate anything. In ancient times, there were records of this fearsome Pokémon burning entire cities to ash. With city-destroying power, it was at least on par with an ultimate-class devil. After reading the information, Saya was conflicted. She desired the power of Gyarados but also worried that her Magikarp might fail to evolve. Don't hesitate, Saya. I think this Magikarp has great potential. It should be able to evolve, Roy encouraged her. Alright, Saya decided, trusting his judgment. She used the contract magic and successfully made the Magikarp her familiar. The Magikarp, now a familiar, became even more lively, splashing around excitedly. Honestly. Come here. Saya called out to her new familiar. The Magikarp swiftly swam towards her. You better evolve into Gyarados, or else, humph. Saya threatened playfully, petting the Magikarp. The Magikarp seemed to understand her words and calmed down. Then, its body began to glow white. What's this? Saya looked at the glowing Magikarp, then at Roy, confused. It's evolving, Roy explained. Really? That's great! Saya exclaimed with joy. But the Magikarp didn't seem to be evolving successfully. The light around it started to fade. Oh no, it's failing. What do we do? Saya asked anxiously. Roy's eyes lit up. Saya, try using your magic. Without hesitation, Saya channeled her magic into the Magikarp. A miraculous scene unfolded. The white light around the Magikarp intensified as Saya's magic flowed into it. The light elongated, and the Magikarp successfully evolved into Gyarados. Roar! The newly evolved Gyarados let out a triumphant roar. The other Pokémon in the vicinity trembled in fear. Saya beamed with joy, seeing her Magikarp evolve into such a majestic and powerful Gyarados. "Koi, come here," she called out, having already chosen a name. Gyarados were known for their violent tempers. Once enraged, they wouldn't calm down until they had destroyed everything in their path. There were records of Gyarados rampaging for months on end. They were incredibly ferocious Pokémon. However, under Saya's command, this Gyarados obediently lowered its head, its demeanor gentle. "Congratulations, Saya, on catching such a powerful Pokémon. Sayane-san, you're amazing. Koi looks so cool. I want to ride it." Shizuka and the others congratulated Saya on her new familiar. Saya's familiar was the strongest among them so far, and they were envious. "Saya, here you go," Roy said, handing her a Pokeball. "What's this?" Saya and the others looked at the Pokeball curiously. This is a special type of Pokeball called a dive ball. People in this world use them to store Pokémon. The environment inside is perfect for water-type Pokémon, Roy explained. The girls finally understood. Saya used the dive ball, and the massive Gyarados, over 6 meters long, transformed into a beam of white light and was sucked into the ball. "Amazing!" Shizuka exclaimed. "Ha, you all have one too. Here." Roy handed each of them a Pokeball. He had bought them earlier, and now they came in handy. Chapter 66, Dratini, the Snake Charmer. The girls continued to enjoy their time on the beach. Saya even summoned her Gyarados, and she, Alice, and Kaneko rode on its back, playing in the water. After a day of fun and laughter, Roy led the girls deeper into the Pokémon world, venturing into a dense jungle. Clang! As soon as they entered the jungle, they heard a sound like clashing swords. Curious, they followed the sound and found a group of green mantis-like creatures surrounding 2 others engaged in a fierce battle. Their sharp sides clashed, creating a metallic clang with each strike. "It's a Scyther." Saya scanned the Pokémon with her Pokédex and exclaimed, "Wow! It's a really strong Pokémon. Scyther are indeed formidable." "It seems today is the day for a changing of the guard," Roy commented, pointing at the 2 battling Scyther. The younger Scyther clearly had the upper hand. The older one was covered in wounds and wouldn't last much longer. "Anyone interested in capturing that Scyther?" Roy asked the girls with a smile. "I'll do it." Siko volunteered, licking her lips. "I've taken a liking to this Pokémon." Scyther was a bipedal, insectoid Pokémon with 3 pointed horns on its head and large white pincers for arms. It looked like it was born for battle, which was precisely why Siko was drawn to it. "Go, Seiko. Siko-ne-san, you can do it. You have to catch that Pokémon. Go for it." The girls cheered for Siko. The battle ended with the old leader falling, and a new leader emerged, the other Scyther bowing before it. Siko dashed forward and confronted the new leader. The Scyther raised its pincers, ready to fight. Siko drew her sword and pointed it at the Scyther. "If you lose, you'll become my familiar." Although the Scyther didn't understand her words, in the world of Pokémon, it was common knowledge that the loser of a battle became the victor's Pokémon. The Scyther charged at Siko. Its speed was like lightning, its pincers even faster. In the blink of an eye, the Scyther's pincers were inches from Siko's face. Clang! Siko effortlessly blocked the attack with her sword. Although the Scyther was strong, possessing the strength of at least a middle-class devil, it was no match for Siko. Within a few rounds, the Scyther was defeated. Siko successfully formed a contract with it. They continued their journey through the jungle. The jungle was teeming with various Pokémon, and the girls captured the ones they liked. Okino caught an EV, Rias obtained a Ponyta, Alice got a Growlithe, and Nezuko captured a Vulpix. Mitsuri caught a Rhyhorn, the 3 little girls from the Butterfly Mansion contracted the 3 Happiny hatched from Chansey's eggs, and Aoi Kanzaki caught a Jumpluff. Only Roy and Kaneko remained without familiars. Roy didn't care much for Pokémon. He was determined to capture Toru and Kanna as his familiars someday. Unless it was a legendary Pokemon, he wasn't interested. Kaneko, naturally, preferred cat-like Pokemon, but they hadn't encountered any yet. The first cat-like Pokemon that came to Roy's mind was Meowth. Meowth were usually found in towns, so he led the girls back to civilization. In a restaurant, Roy and the girls enjoyed a delicious lunch, savoring the unique cuisine of the Pokemon world. Roy noticed Rias' hesitant expression. "Rias, what's wrong?" he asked. "Aren't you worried about the rating game against Riser?" Roy understood her concern. Don't worry, Rias. No matter how long we stay here, it'll only be an instant back in our world, he reassured her. Rias was surprised but ultimately believed him. She no longer worried about the rating game. Just then, Roy noticed Kaneko, Alice, and the other Lolas running out of the restaurant. Curious, he followed them and found Kaneko feeding some food to a dirty stray cat. The cat had pale yellow fur, with its tail tip and hind paws turning brown. A shiny oval coin was attached to its forehead. Despite its scruffy appearance, it exuded an air of determination. It was a Meowth, the Pokemon Roy had been looking for. It seemed Kaneko and Meowth were destined to meet. Of course, Roy was mistaken. Stray Meowth were quite common in cities, often resorting to stealing food, making them a nuisance to humans. "It seems Kaneko has found her partner," Rias commented, approaching them with a smile. "Can I make it my familiar?" Kaneko asked, looking at Roy and Rias. Perhaps remembering her own difficult childhood, Kaneko wanted to take in the stray Meowth as her familiar. Of course, Rias agreed with a smile. "Meowth is a good Pokemon," Roy added. With their approval, Kaneko took out a Pokeball and held it out to the Meowth. The Meowth looked at Kaneko with determined eyes, then willingly transformed into a beam of light and entered the Pokeball. Kaneko smiled, having successfully captured the Meowth. She bowed to Roy. "Thank you, Roy-senpai." You're welcome, Kaneko-chan." "You caught it yourself," Roy replied, patting her head. "Now that everyone has a familiar, it's time for us to return," Roy announced, leading the girls back to the restaurant. Era, but Roy hasn't caught a familiar yet, has he?" Aquino pointed out. "I don't need one," Roy said dismissively. "I'm going to be a dragon knight," he thought to himself. "Pokemon aren't that important, especially since I haven't encountered any legendary ones." "That's not fair, Roy-chan. You helped everyone else catch Pokemon, but you don't have one yourself," Shizuka protested, pouting. "Yes, how can you be the only one without a familiar? Let's continue our search," Rias urged. Yeah, the other girls chimed in. Unable to refuse their enthusiastic requests, Roy reluctantly agreed to continue their Pokemon hunt. This time, he decided to settle for any Pokemon that caught his eye. Legendary Pokemon were simply too rare. That evening, they set up camp by a river. The girls busied themselves with preparing dinner. Suddenly, a large net fell from the sky, trapping Chansey, who was collecting ingredients by the river. "Chansey? Chansey?" Chansey cried out in distress. Shizuka was startled. "Who's there?" Siko reacted quickly, realizing someone was trying to steal Chansey. "Since you asked so sincerely, we shall generously inform you. To protect the world from devastation. To unite all peoples within our nation. To denounce the evils of truth and love. To extend our reach to the stars above." Hearing those familiar lines, Roy knew who had arrived without even looking. The other girls, however, cringed at the over-the-top, Chunibu-esque introduction. "Release my Chansey," Shizuka demanded, glaring at the trio. "That's not happening. Chansey is a rare Pokemon," James replied with a sly grin. "By the way," Jessie chimed in, pointing at the Pikachu in Asia's arms, "would you mind handing over that Pikachu?" "No." Asia hugged Pikachu tightly and shook her head. "Humph. If you refuse, we'll take it by force." Jessie sneered. "Wheezing. Ekans. they both released their Pokémon. Quite arrogant, aren't they? Roy muttered, watching Team Rocket. He hadn't expected the comedic relief trio from the anime to be so aggressive. Let me handle them, Mitsuri declared, stepping forward. No need. This is the world of Pokémon. We'll settle this with Pokémon, Roy said, stopping her. Saya's eyes lit up. She threw a Pokeball, shouting, "Go, Koi!" What? It's a Gyarados. Jesse, James, and Meowth trembled in fear at the sight of the massive, intimidating Pokémon. Team Rocket was still weak at this point in time, nowhere near their later strength. Even their Ekans and Weezing cowered, too afraid to attack. Gyarados had the Intimidate ability, and its power was on a completely different level. Koi, use Twister. Saya commanded. Roar! Gyarados unleashed a powerful Twister. Ekans, Weezing, and Team Rocket were swept up into the sky and disappeared. Looks like Team Rocket's blasting off again. We'll be back. Meowth. Roy's eye twitched as he heard their familiar catchphrase. Wow! Sayane-san is so cool. Alice and the other Lolas cheered, impressed by Saya's quick victory. Ah ha ha! Saya couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. Despite being a genius, she had never battled with Pokémon before. In just a few days, she had already grasped the basics of Pokémon battles. But why do Pokémon need to be commanded? She wondered. Wouldn't it be better to train their independent combat abilities? It seems Saya has the potential to become a Pokémon master, Roy praised. Humph. Of course. Saya replied, puffing out her chest. Just then, Nezuko stepped on something soft. She looked down, confused. Roy noticed her reaction and walked over. It seems to be the shed skin of some kind of snake Pokémon. No, wait. Saya scanned it with her Pokédex and exclaimed, "It's a Dratini's shed skin." This is great. What is it? Shinobu asked, confused. Dratini is a legendary Pokémon. Now Roy can have it as his familiar. Saya explained excitedly. The girls were thrilled to hear about a legendary Pokémon. Roy was also intrigued. He knew about Dratini. Where can we find it? Akino asked curiously. Dratini is a serpentine Pokémon that lives in lakes and rivers. Saya pointed towards the nearby river. It must still be in this river. They all looked at the river. Due to Saya summoning Gyarados earlier, the river was eerily silent. The other Pokémon were too scared to show themselves, let alone the timid Dratini. Saya felt a bit embarrassed. Don't worry, Saya. If we know Dratini is in this river, we can lure it out, Roy said confidently. Really? Of course. How? We'll leave that to Shizuka. Roy turned to Shizuka. Me? Shizuka pointed at herself. Yes. Chansey eggs are a favorite food of many Pokémon. We can use them to lure out the Dratini. Okay, no problem. Shizuka replied enthusiastically, then went to prepare the food with Chansey. Let's help too. The girls joined in, and soon, the campsite was filled with a delicious aroma. Many Pokémon, attracted by the smell, gathered nearby, drooling. Dratini primarily fed on things that sank to the bottom of the water. Once the Chansey eggs were ready, Roy tossed some into the river. They waited. But there was no sign of Dratini. It seems Dratini has already left, Roy sighed in disappointment. Maybe it will come out soon, Asia said hopefully. That's impossible. Before Roy could finish his sentence, a small blue head emerged from the water. It had purple eyes, a white bump on its forehead, white fins on either side of its head, and a large, round, white nose. This adorable creature was Dratini. It's Dratini! Saya exclaimed, barely containing her excitement. She lowered her voice, afraid to scare it away. Roy didn't try to capture it immediately. Instead, he calmly placed some Chansey eggs on the riverbank. Dratini's eyes lit up at the delicious smell, but its timid nature made it hesitate to approach the group of humans. Roy and the others pretended to ignore the Dratini and continued eating their dinner. After a while, the allure of the food overcame its fear, and Dratini slowly swam towards the shore. Seeing that no one was paying attention to it, Dratini cautiously took a bite of the eggs. It quickly finished the small portion. After all, even a young Dratini was over 2 meters long. Roy placed more chancy eggs nearby. Perhaps sensing their lack of hostility, Dratini boldly approached and continued eating. Roy smiled. He continued to feed Dratini, and after a hearty meal, the Pokémon had grown to trust him. It even nudged Roy affectionately when he was slow to offer more food. Roy then successfully captured Dratini as his familiar. Yay! Roy-kun did it! Shizuka cheered, even more excited than Roy himself. Ha, now that everyone has a familiar, I declare this familiar catching expedition a success. Let's pack up and head back tomorrow, Roy announced. The girls readily agreed. The next day, Roy took them back to town. He needed to buy some Pokémon training devices. These devices could teach Pokémon various moves, increasing their strength. He also needed to purchase evolution stones, essential for evolving certain Pokémon. Once everything was ready, Roy and the girls returned to the world of Highschool DxD. Chapter 67, Roy's First Queen, From High Class to Mao. Highschool DxD World, Rias Mansion. We're finally back. This trip was quite fruitful. Yes, everyone caught amazing familiars. Roy-sama is really incredible. The girls chattered excitedly as they returned to the mansion. They released their Pokémon, filling the mansion with even more energy and activity. After a while, they went to rest. After all, they had been camping outdoors for the past few days, and nothing beat the comfort of home. Roy and Rias were the only ones left in the spacious living room. Rias, you must have many questions, Roy said softly, sipping the tea Aquino had prepared. Their trip to the Pokémon world had revealed many unbelievable things. But Roy knew the girls wouldn't pry if he didn't offer an explanation. That was one of the things he appreciated about them. Yes, I do have many questions, Rias admitted, setting down her teacup and sitting beside Roy. She wrapped her arms around his neck, her bright eyes gazing into his. If you want to tell me, I'll listen. Seeing her understanding and supportive demeanor, Roy couldn't resist any longer. He leaned in and kissed her. Rias was momentarily surprised but quickly responded to his kiss. Suddenly, a burst of flames erupted in the room. A fiery magic circle appeared, emblazoned with a flame-like crest. Rias seemed to sense who was arriving. She gently pushed Roy away. Roy also knew who it was, Riser Phoenix. But he didn't care. He was focused on Rias. The magic circle flared, bathing the room in a crimson light. Flames surged from the circle, and a wave of heat washed over them. A figure emerged from the magic circle. Yo, Rias, I've come to get you, the figure announced, then froze, his eyes widening at the sight of Roy and Rias locked in an embrace. His face instantly darkened, and his aura flared with rage. Roy finally released Rias, having savored her kiss. Rias, her face flushed, caught her breath and turned to the newcomer. Riser Phoenix, this is the Gremory territory, she warned. The newcomer, dressed in a red suit with his jacket casually unbuttoned, was indeed Riser Phoenix. Rias, you're a high-class devil. How can you associate with this trash, he scoffed, seemingly unfazed by what he had just witnessed. It's none of your business who I associate with. And Roy is not trash. Rias retorted coldly. Rias, don't forget, I'm your fiancé. I've come to take you back to the underworld with me, Riser declared, approaching her with a smug grin. He reached out to caress her cheek, completely ignoring Roy. Calling me trash? I can't let that slide, Roy said, his voice low and dangerous. The room, previously filled with the heat from Riser's flames, suddenly turned icy cold. Roy vanished from his spot and reappeared before Riser, punching him squarely in the face. Bam! Riser, caught off guard, was sent flying, crashing through several walls before being buried under the rubble. Roy hadn't held back. "How dare you lay a hand on my woman?" Roy snarled, returning to Rias and pulling her close. His possessiveness stunned Rias. She looked at Roy with adoration, her eyes filled with warmth. "What's going on? What happened? Royoni-chan, are you okay?" The commotion drew the other girls to the room. "It's nothing. Just an unwelcome guest," Roy said dismissively. Boom! The rubble where Riser had landed exploded outwards. Riser emerged, engulfed in flames. "You lowly devil!" he roared, his face contorted with rage. "I'll incinerate you right here." As the third son of the Phoenix family, one of the 72 pillars, he had never been so humiliated. With a wave of his hand, a crimson magic circle appeared, and over a dozen beautiful girls of various appearances materialized behind him. These were Riser's servants. Riser, with his harem of beautiful devils, was the envy of many male devils in the underworld. "Riser Phoenix, I won't let you do as you please," Rias declared, stepping in front of Roy. "Humph. If you want to hurt Roy, you'll have to go through us first," Saya retorted, taking out a pokeball. "Koi, come out." Roar! A beam of light shot out from the pokeball, and the massive Gyarados appeared. Its intimidating aura terrified Riser's low-class devil servants. Even Ubaluna, Riser's queen and an high-class devil, looked apprehensive. Only Riser remained unfazed by Gyarados. "Humph. It's just a beast," he scoffed. Indeed, although Gyarados was powerful intermediate high class with ultimate class potential, it couldn't harm the immortal Riser. Just as the tension reached its peak, a silver magic circle appeared between the two groups. A woman with beautiful silver hair and dressed in a maid outfit emerged. It was Graphia, Roy's elder sister. Graphia's arrival brought with it an overwhelming aura that pressed down on Riser and his peerage. Riser's low-class devil servants, already terrified by Gyarados, collapsed to the ground. Even Riser and Ubaluna were intimidated by her power and couldn't help but lower their heads. Roy silently praised his sister. She was truly a protective older sibling. Without even asking for an explanation, she had asserted her dominance, making Roy feel a bit sorry for Riser. He had already been punched by Roy and now had to endure the oppressive aura of a Mao-class devil. Riser felt utterly humiliated. "Riser Phoenix," Graphia said calmly, "the Phoenix and Gremory families have decided that Rias' engagement will be determined by a rating game between you and Roy. Therefore, until then, please refrain from any unnecessary actions." The silver-haired Annihilation Queen. Damn it! Riser cursed under his breath, recognizing Graphia. He didn't act rashly anymore. After all, this was the woman who had challenged Seraphal Leviathan for the title of the strongest female devil. "You challenge me to a rating game? Humph. Just you wait. I'll crush you," Riser threatened before teleporting away with his peerage. Although cocky, Riser was a formidable fighter, ranked among the top 10 newcomers in rating games. He had only lost once, and that was intentional, to maintain good relations with his opponent. Roy, on the other hand, was known as a failure in the underworld and had never participated in a rating game. Whether he even had a peerage was unknown. That's why Riser had underestimated him. After Riser left, Graphia turned to Roy. "Come with me." "Yes, sister," Roy replied, instructing the girls to rest, then followed his sister. Once they were gone, the girls erupted in chatter. Era, so that's the silver-haired Annihilation Queen. Roikuan's sister is so cool. She's amazing. I wonder what she wants to talk to Roy about." Meanwhile, Roy followed Graphia to a private room. His sister was elegant and beautiful, though her maid outfit seemed a bit out of place. He wasn't sure when she had developed a fondness for maid outfits. Of course, Roy didn't mind. "Roy, you don't have a queen in your peerage yet, do you?" Graphia asked. No," Roy admitted, surprised by her question. He hadn't introduced the girls' ranks when he brought them to the underworld last time. Then let me be your queen, Graphia declared calmly. What? Roy's eyes widened in disbelief. He had considered asking Graphia to be his queen, but it was just a fleeting thought. He wouldn't actually ask her. He didn't expected her to offer herself. Of course, sis. Roy exclaimed excitedly. He took out the queen piece and handed it to her. He had long envied Riser Phoenix. Not only did Riser have a peerage full of beautiful girls, but he had even made his own sister his servant, adding a little sister, a tribute to his team. It was a feat that many devils envied. But Roy was no different now. He was about to make his own sister his queen. The thought thrilled him. Graphia was surprised by Roy's immediate acceptance. She found his excitement both amusing and endearing. She took the queen piece and merged it with her body. A powerful aura erupted, enveloping the entire mansion. The girls and their Pokémon were stunned into stillness. And this was just Graphia's unintentional release of power. Then, another powerful aura emerged, rivaling Graphia's. This was Roy's aura. Having made Graphia his queen, he received a tremendous power boost. His strength surged from the mid-level of high-class ultimate class Mao class. After a long moment, they both retracted their auras. Graphia was the first to recover. She immediately noticed the change in her power. Her strength had increased significantly, almost reaching the peak of a Mao class devil. If she could break through, she would become a super devil. Super devils were at least a level above Mao class devils. An ordinary queen piece wouldn't have boosted her power this much. Graphia looked at her brother curiously, but she couldn't see through his strength anymore. Her curiosity about her little brother grew. What's going on? She finally asked. Sister, the evil pieces I gave you are mutated pieces I obtained by chance. Every time I gain a servant, my strength increases. Now, I also have the power of a Mao class devil, Roy explained with a smile. He attributed the system granted evil pieces to chance, making it seem less unusual. He wasn't ready to reveal the system's existence yet. Even so, Graphia was astonished. She had never heard of such powerful and unique evil pieces. And she was touched by Roy's trust in her. Sister, although you're now my queen, I won't let you participate in the raiding game against Riser Phoenix, Roy declared. After all, it would be unfair to him if you fought. Roy knew why Graphia had offered to become his queen. She was worried he would lose against Riser. Now that his strength surpassed Riser's, there was no need for Graphia to participate. Even with his previous high-class devil strength, Roy was confident in his victory. Very well, Graphia agreed. Now that Roy was a Mao class devil, she had no reason to worry. No matter how powerful Riser's immortality was, he was still just an high-class devil. He couldn't defeat a Mao. Roy and Graphia returned to the living room. The damaged walls had been repaired, a testament to the convenience of magic. Roy addressed the girls with a smile. I have an announcement to make. The girls looked at him expectantly. Sister has become my queen. The girls were stunned. They hadn't expected the aloof and serious Graphia to become Roy's queen. That's great. Now we'll definitely win the raiding game against Riser, Asia exclaimed, relieved. She had been worried about the upcoming match. Yes. Graphia-sama is as strong as a Mao. She can easily defeat that Riser chicken. Alice chimed in. No, sister won't be participating in the raiding game, Roy corrected them. After all, it would be bullying to have her fight Riser. And even without sister, I'm confident we can win. Yes, we've been training hard for this. We've all become much stronger, Siko added with a smile. Chapter 68, The Raiding Game begins. When it came to dedication and effort, Siko was undoubtedly the most diligent among them. Her statement resonated with the others. Humph. I definitely want to participate in this raiding game. Saya declared, confidently holding up her pokeball and looking at Roy. According to the rules of a raiding game, only one queen, 2 bishops, 2 knights, 2 rooks, and 8 pawns could participate, along with Roy, the king. Roy had 5 potential bishops: Saya, Shizuka, Asia, Yuriko, and Alice. That's why Saya was the first to volunteer. Having obtained a powerful familiar as Gyarados, she naturally wanted to showcase her strength. Shizuka, Asia, and the others hadn't realized this limitation yet. Roy considered Saya's request for a moment, then nodded. Alright, Saya, you can participate. Saya beamed with joy, determined to perform well in the rating game. Now that Saya has brought up the topic of participants, let's decide on the lineup, Roy said, looking at the girls. For the rooks, we'll have Nezuko and Mitsuri Kanroji. Leave it to us. Nezuko and Mitsuri declared confidently. They were the only ones in Roy's peerage with high-class devil strength. For the knights, I'll rely on Siko and Kaneo. No problem. Siko replied with a smile. Kaneo nodded in agreement. For the bishops, we have Saya, and... Roy looked at Asia, Alice, Shizuka, and Yuriko. Yuriko was still quite weak, as was her Charmander. The same applied to Alice. Shizuka's healing magic wasn't very proficient yet, and her Chansey wasn't suited for combat. Asia, with her sacred gear, Twilight Healing, was the most suitable for a support role. Moreover, her Pikachu was a decent fighter and could protect her. So, the bishops will be Saya and Asia. Yay! Asia was overjoyed to be chosen. Saya, you sly fox. Yuriko grumbled, pouting at her daughter. Saya must have known about the rating game's limitations beforehand, which was why she had volunteered so quickly. Humph. Saya, hearing her mother's complaint, crossed her arms and let out a haughty snort, unable to hide her smug grin. Finally, for the pawns, we'll have Rika, Kene, Shinobu, Makomo, and Aoi Kanzaki. Although 8 pawns could participate, these were the only ones available in Roy's peerage. No problem. Leave it to us. Rika exclaimed excitedly. Her strength had increased significantly through training, and she was eager to prove herself. Roy-sama, what about us? The 3 little girls from the Butterfly Mansion approached Roy, their eyes wide with anticipation. Roy had overlooked them. They were technically pawns as well, but they were simply too young to participate in a rating game. He patted their heads gently. You can cheer for us. Okay. The 3 Lolas nodded obediently, their cuteness overwhelming. I envy you, Roy. You have so many exceptional servants, Rias commented, her voice laced with a hint of longing. Roy's servants were not only powerful and promising but also got along well with each other. In all these years, she only had Akino and Kaneko. Roy, in just a short time, had assembled such a formidable peerage. Rias couldn't help but feel envious. Ha, Rias. You'll find exceptional servants too, Roy reassured her with a chuckle. Seeing her dejection, he decided to help her recruit Sinovia and Irina Shidu, the holy sword users, when they encountered them. Well then, it's time for me to return to the underworld, Graphia suddenly announced. Graphia-sama, won't you stay a bit longer? Alice and the other Lolas pleaded. Graphia smiled and patted their heads. The Gremory and Phoenix families initially wanted me to be the referee for this rating game, but I declined. Now that there's nothing to worry about here, I'll accept the referee position after all. She turned to Roy with a smile. Roy, I'm looking forward to your performance. I'll do my best, Roy replied confidently. Perhaps because Roy was growing stronger, Graphia smiled more often now. Graphia nodded in satisfaction and activated a magic circle, vanishing before their eyes. As soon as her magic circle disappeared, another one appeared in the living room. Who's that? Rias wondered, looking at the glowing circle. The light faded, revealing 2 figures. Sona? Rias and Roy were surprised to see Sona Citri and Tsubaki Shinra. Era, Sona Kaishu has come in person, Akino greeted them with a smile and went to prepare tea. Sona, what brings you here? Rias asked curiously. Of course, it's about your engagement, Rias. This matter has become quite the sensation in the underworld, Sona replied, glancing at Roy meaningfully. Roy felt a headache coming on. He had recently flirted with Sona, promising to make her his fiancée if he defeated her in a chess game. Now, in a short span of time, he was about to participate in another game, this time for Rias. Even Sona was surprised by this development. She was a bit jealous, of course. After all, she had been paying close attention to Roy, and they had that agreement. But Sona didn't mention it and instead chatted amicably with Rias. Roy sat quietly, feeling a bit awkward. After a while, Sona announced her departure. Sona-senpai, let me see you out, Roy offered. He wanted to talk to Sona privately. Otherwise, she would have just teleported away. Sona nodded and turned to Tsubaki. Tsubaki, you can go back first. Yes, Kaicho, Tsubaki replied and teleported away. Roy and Sona left the mansion. Under the moonlight, they strolled side by side. Roy hesitated, unsure how to broach the topic. It seems you've forgotten our agreement, Sona said, breaking the silence. Roy quickly stepped in front of her. Of course not, he denied. Sona looked at him calmly. Then why are you participating in a raiding game against Riser Phoenix for Rias, she asked. Roy sighed. Well, I can't just stand by and watch Rias get engaged to that idiot, can I? What about our agreement? Don't worry, senpai. I'll defeat you and make you my fiancé, Roy assured her. Sona finally understood. Her little brother was quite greedy. He wanted both of them. You're quite greedy. I've changed my mind. What? Roy panicked, thinking she was retracting their agreement about the raiding game. Before he could speak, Sona continued. I've changed my mind. Unless you can defeat my sister, I won't agree to become your fiancé. Roy stared at her in surprise. Wasn't that the same condition as before? To win Sona's hand, he had to overcome her sister, Mouse Seraphal Leviathan. This was something he had already anticipated. After all, Seraphal's Siscon tendencies were well known throughout the underworld. Fine, not even Mao can stop my resolve. Roy declared. Perhaps I can get a 2-for-1 deal and defeat both sisters, he thought to himself. Sona was touched by his words. She was unaware of his current strength and still believed he was a middle-class devil. He was willing to challenge a Mao for her sake. A smile finally graced her lips. Under the romantic moonlight, Roy couldn't resist any longer. He pulled Sona close and kissed her. 2 days passed quickly. Roy and the girls relaxed and enjoyed their time together, taking a break from training. In the subspace modeled after Ko Academy, Roy and his peerage appeared in the Occult Research Club. As soon as they materialized, Graphia's voice echoed through the space. Greetings, everyone. I am Graphia Lucifuge, the referee for this raiding game between Roy Lucifuge and Riser Phoenix. This raiding game will be held in a subspace modeled after Ko Academy in the human world, as per the agreement between both parties. In the underworld, the raiding game arena was packed with spectators. Oh, the referee is the silver-haired Annihilation Queen. She's so powerful. The audience erupted in cheers upon hearing Graphia's voice. She was quite popular in the underworld. Isn't one of the participants Graphia's younger brother? Is it appropriate for her to be the referee? Graphia's brother is that infamous failure in the underworld, right? I heard he's still a low-class devil. What a disgrace to their family. A low-class devil have the guts to challenge Riser Phoenix? Where does he get the confidence? Exactly. Many devil nobles had come to watch the match as a form of entertainment, believing that Roy, the failure, had no chance of defeating Riser. Only a few individuals, such as the Maos, could perceive Roy's true strength. The person Rias has chosen is quite interesting, Sirzex Lucifer commented, observing Roy and his peerage with amusement. As Rias' older brother, he naturally cared about her. He knew about Roy, of course, but his impression of Roy was still stuck in the past. He hadn't expected Roy's strength to increase so dramatically in such a short time. Surzex now acknowledged Roy's potential. Is that the man who's close to Sona-chan? I'll have to observe him closely. Seraphal Leviathan also scrutinized Roy. To her, Roy was an enigma. Even she couldn't see through his power. This was understandable, as they were both Mao-class devils. After a while, Graphia's voice echoed again. Both teams will be teleported to their respective bases. Roy Lucifuge's base is the Occult Research Club in the old school building, and Riser Phoenix's base is the principal's office in the new school building. Therefore, pawn promotion will take effect upon entering the opponent's base. Pawn promotion? Makomo tilted her head in confusion. Pawn promotion means that once a pawn reaches the opponent's base, their power will be elevated to the level of a queen, the strongest piece, Roy explained. The girl's eyes lit up. If they could be promoted to queen, they might even be able to fight high-class devils. The match will last until dawn in the human world. Now, let the game begin. Dawn! 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 The school bell rang, signaling the start of the rating game. Roy, what's our strategy? Seiko asked, unable to contain her excitement. Roy considered this. He didn't think they needed a complex strategy. A direct assault should suffice. Just as he was about to say so, Saya interjected. Leave the strategy to me, the genius and beautiful girl. Knowing Roy well, Saya anticipated his response and took charge. Roy nodded. All right, Saya, you're in charge of the strategy. It was a guaranteed victory anyway. Letting Saya take the lead wouldn't hurt. The girls turned their attention to Saya. Ahem, here's my strategy. Saya cleared her throat. I've divided the battlefield into 3 lanes. This will make it easier to assign everyone their positions. She unfurled a map. 3 distinct lanes were marked on the map, resembling the lanes in League of Legends, clear and easy to understand. First, Kane, Shinobu, and Rika will take the top lane. I'll take the mid lane with Aoi and Asia as support. Aoi's Jumpluff has the ability to detect enemies with its radar. Kaneo, Makomo, and Seiko, you take the bottom lane. Finally, Nezuko and Mitsuri will be the junglers. Your task is to support the other lanes as needed. I've gathered information on Riser Phoenix. The only real threat is his queen, Yubaluna. If she appears, Nezuko and Mitsuri will attack her together. That's my strategy. Chapter 69, The Game Begins? Time for a mid-lane push. Clap, clap, clap. Roy applauded Saya's strategy. Amazing, Saya. You're incredible. He hadn't expected Saya to devise such a well-organized plan, using a simple and easy-to-understand approach inspired by games. He was curious if Saya had played League of Legends before. The strength was balanced across the 3 lanes. By pushing simultaneously, they wouldn't have to worry about enemy pawns reaching their base. And with Nezuko and Mitsuri ready to provide support, it was a foolproof plan. Even if they encountered Yubaluna, Riser's queen, they could handle her. Saya proudly raised her chin, basking in Roy's praise. The other girls also looked at Saya with admiration. Everyone, take one of these, Roy said, handing out tiny orbs the size of his pinky nail. What's this? Mitsuri asked, curiously examining the orb. It's a communication device. Just put it in your ear, and you can talk to each other over long distances, Saya explained, inserting one into her ear. It seems Saya understood the purpose of the orbs. That's right, Roy confirmed with a smile. The girls put on the communication devices. Then let's not waste any time. We'll proceed with Saya's strategy, Roy declared. Yes, the girls replied in unison. Roy and the girls set off. Roy wasn't planning to wait at their base. The enemy pawns wouldn't be able to break through their defenses and reach their base anyway. A swift and decisive push was his preferred approach. Sona, observing the match, frowned as she saw Roy's aggressive strategy. Such recklessness wasn't advisable, in her opinion. Rias, however, had no objections to their plan. She knew the extent of Roy's and the girls' strength. They split into 3 groups as they exited the old school building. Roy decided to join Saya's group. On paper, they were the weakest of the 3 teams. However, underestimating them would be a grave mistake. After all, Saya had Gyarados, a high-class level Pokémon, with ultimate class potential. The 3 teams advanced quickly. The first encounter occurred in the bottom lane. Incoming! 3 enemies spotted in the bottom lane. Aoi Kanzaki reported through the communication device. Her Jumpluff had detected the enemies. Kane, Makomo, and Siko, who were in the bottom lane, became alert. Ha 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 ha. They have the guts show themselves openly? They clearly underestimate us. Fools! You've fallen into our trap. 3 figures jumped out from their hiding spots. They were Riser's pawns, Shiraya, Mira, and Island Nell, the twin girls. As soon as they finished speaking, red magic circles appeared around Kane, Makomo, and Siko, radiating destructive energy. Ha ha, this is the Queen's explosion magic. You can all surrender now, the 3 girls taunted, watching Kane, Makomo, and Siko trapped within the magic circles. The magic circles flared, and explosions erupted. Boom! 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 Smoke and dust filled the area, obscuring everything from view. Outside the subspace, the spectators watched the match unfold on a large screen. Oh no, they've fallen into Yubaluna's trap! Sona exclaimed, her brow furrowed. She knew how powerful Yubaluna was. I doubt they'll be defeated by such an attack, Tsubaki Shinra commented, adjusting her glasses. Since Grafia hadn't announced anyone's defeat, Tsubaki assumed they were still fine. Of course, Kane, Makomo, and Siko wouldn't be defeated so easily. This was just a simple trap set by Yubaluna. It might have severely injured low-class devils, but Kane, Makomo, and Siko were all middle-class devils. Although powerful, the explosion magic couldn't harm them. As the smoke cleared, the 3 girls stood unharmed. What? They're not even injured. How is that possible? Shiraya, Mira, and the twins stared in disbelief. Too weak, Siko commented, disappointed by their lack of strength. She yearned for a challenging battle, not a fight against low-class devil weaklings. Siko moved with lightning speed. In the blink of an eye, she appeared before the 3 girls. A flash of her blade, and she sheathed her sword. So fast. How? Damn it! Before they could finish their surprised exclamations, the 3 girls collapsed, dissolving into particles of light. Having suffered severe injuries, they were ejected from the subspace. 3 of Riser Phoenix's pawns have been defeated. Grafia's majestic voice announced. Yes. The plan worked. Sada cheered, clapping her hands. Sikone-san is amazing. Asia exclaimed happily. It was just 3 low-class devil pawns, Siko replied, feeling a bit disappointed. For enemies approaching in the top lane. They're about 100 meters ahead of you, Aoi reported, her Jumpluff having detected more enemies. Finally, something interesting. Rika declared, drawing her light gun and sword, her eyes gleaming with battle lust. The 3 girls in the top lane, Rika, Kane, and Shinobu, rushed towards the enemy without any attempt at concealment. Inside the school's spacious gymnasium, a voice echoed. Don't bother hiding. I know you're here, servants of the Lucifuge. Rika and the others had just entered the gymnasium when they encountered the enemy. The one who had spoken was a girl dressed like Chun-Li, named Shualan, a rook. Behind her stood a blue-haired girl in red clothes, wielding a wooden staff. This was Mira, a pawn who had instantly defeated Issei Hayadu in their first encounter in the original story. The remaining 2 were twin Lolas, Isle and Nell, also pawns. Rika instantly recognized them, thanks to the information Aquino had provided. Of course, in the underworld, the members of Riser Phoenix's peerage weren't exactly a secret. Humph. We don't need to hide from the likes of you. Rika scoffed. So it's 3 pawns, Shualan said, placing her hands on her hips and introducing herself with a haughty air. I am Shuelon, a rook. I'm Mira, a pawn. I'm Isle, a pawn. And I'm Nell, also a pawn. Oh. Introductions? Rika raised an eyebrow, then chuckled. Well then, I'm Rika, a pawn. Shinobu Kocho, a pawn. Kane Kocho, a pawn. The Kocho sisters also introduced themselves. Alright, enough with the formalities, Rika declared, then turned to the Kocho sisters with a confident grin. I'll take on the rook. Then I'll choose that pawn, Kane said, smiling at Mira. Eh? You want me to bully two little girls? Shinobu sighed, looking at Isle and Nell. Well then, let's begin. Rika charged forward. The Kocho sisters exchanged glances and followed suit. Each girl faced their designated opponent. Isle and Nell, with their low-class devil strength, were no match for Shinobu, who was at the peak of middle-class devil. Shinobu, feeling playful, toyed with the twin Lolas, her movements like a phantom. Kane faced Mira, who was at the early stage of middle-class devil. But she was still no match for Kane. However, Kane didn't intend to end the fight quickly. She suppressed her power and fought Mira at her level. Finally, there was Rika versus Shuelon. Their strength was roughly equal. Shuelon, as a rook, possessed great strength and defense. Although Rika couldn't match her in those areas, her light gun and sword were incredibly sharp, making Shuelon wary of direct confrontation. As a result, Shuelon found herself on the defensive against Rika's relentless attacks. After a few rounds, Rika decided to end the fight. It's time to finish this, she declared, looking at the slightly disheveled Shuelon. Humph. I won't lose, Shuelon retorted. Rika smirked. She twirled her light gun and holstered it, then gripped her light sword with both hands, focusing her attention on Shuelon. Wind breathing, second form, claws purifying wind, she shouted. Rika unleashed 4 claw-shaped wind blades, each capable of slicing through an opponent's weapon. What? Shuelon was caught off guard. She had no choice but to raise her arms defensively. Swoosh. 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 A cack. Shuelon screamed as blood splattered. After blocking the wind blades, her arms were mangled and useless. She was no longer combat capable. Shuelon was then ejected from the subspace. Seeing that Rika had defeated the rook, the Kocho sisters swiftly finished off their opponents as well. 3 pawns and 1 rook of Riser Phoenix have been defeated. Graphia's voice boomed through the subspace. Roy's team erupted in cheers. Riser Phoenix, however, was not pleased. His servants were being defeated one after another, while his opponent remained unscathed. Don't think you've won yet, Riser sneered. I am Riser Phoenix. He turned to Yubaluna. All of you, go. Show them the power of the Phoenix clan. Yes. Yubaluna and the remaining servants charged into battle. Roy's team communicated through their communication devices, their voices filled with excitement. Saya's plan is amazing. Asia gushed, looking at Saya with admiration. Taking down 7 of their servants with ease. Well done, Saya, Roy praised. The other girls also showered Saya with compliments. Ahaha, it's nothing. They were just weak, Saya replied modestly, waving her hand dismissively. They continued their advance. Squeak! Squeak! Aoi Kanzaki's Jumpluff suddenly turned around and chirped at her. Through their familiar contract, Aoi understood its message. Roy-sama, Jumpluff has detected 8 enemies approaching, she reported. Oh, 8? It seems Riser has sent all his remaining servants, Roy commented. Riser had 15 servants in total. 7 were already defeated, and now the rest were coming for them. It seemed Riser intended to eliminate Roy's group first. After all, they had 2 support members and Roy, the supposed failure. The only one worth noting was Saya's familiar. But Riser had sent Yubaluna, indicating they had a way to deal with the Garridos. Just as they were discussing this, Riser's servants appeared before them. "I am Carlamine, Knight of Riser Phoenix. Let's have an honorable duel." A woman wielding a long sword stepped forward. She was Riser's knight. Aoi Kanzaki met her challenge. "I am Aoi Kanzaki, pawn of Raisama. I accept your challenge." Aoi was a demon slayer who had passed the final selection. However, due to her timid nature, she had remained at the Butterfly Mansion as a medic. But after becoming a devil, she had gained the strength of a middle-class devil, and her timidity had lessened. She didn't back down from Carlamine, who was also a middle-class devil. "Well said, pawn of the Lucifuge," Carlamine exclaimed, impressed by Aoi's courage. She charged forward with a battle cry. Aoi met her charge. Clang! 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 Bang! 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 The two swordswomen clashed, their blades ringing against each other. Carlamine, honestly, all she thinks about is swords, swords, swords. She was so reluctant to be a sacrificial pawn. How foolish. A girl with a Lolita dress and springy blonde pigtails stepped forward, muttering complaints. It was Revel Phoenix, Riser's younger sister. She glanced at Roy and scoffed. "He's quite handsome, but unfortunately, he's a failure. Ria-sama has terrible taste in men." Saya and Asia glared at Revel. "Pretty face, but a venomous tongue," Saya retorted. "So, you're saying those 7 we defeated were just bait?" "Ha, you're not as stupid as you look. Yes, those 7 were bait to divide your forces. Now that we've lured you out, we'll finish you off, and victory will be ours," Revel declared smugly. It seemed she was the one who had devised this plan. Roy and his group hadn't bothered concealing their movements. So, the 7 servants they had defeated were indeed bait. However, Roy wasn't fooled. In fact, he found it amusing. When Aoi had informed them that all 8 remaining enemies were heading their way, Rika and the others in the top lane, Siko and the others in the bottom lane, and Nezuko and Mitsuri, the junglers, had already started converging on their location. Kuo Academy wasn't that large. They could reach them within a minute. Nezuko and Mitsuri would be even faster. Once they formed an encirclement, Riser's servants wouldn't be able to escape. "Saya, I'll leave this to you," Roy said, pulling Asia aside. "No problem," Saya replied eagerly. This was exactly what she wanted to do. She looked at Revel and the others. "If you want to finish us off, come and get us. Koi, it's time to work." Saya grinned, throwing her pokeball. A golden light erupted from the ball. Roar! The massive Gyarados appeared. Its intimidating aura filled the area, causing several of Riser's servants to tremble in fear. Even Revel, who hadn't seen Gyarados before, turned pale. Wait! I'm not participating in the fight." Revel waved her hands frantically. She didn't want to fight this scary familiar. "I don't care. Koi, attack. Use Hydro Pump." Saya ignored her pleas and commanded Gyarados. Chapter 70, The Might of Gyarados. Gyarados roared, unleashing a massive Hydro Pump from its mouth. The torrent of water surged towards Revel and the others like an unstoppable flood. Several of Riser's servants, including Isabella, rushed to defend Revel. But even they weren't confident in their ability to withstand such a powerful attack. Just in time, Ubaluna swung her staff, conjuring a large red magic circle before them. A crimson beam of destructive energy shot out, intercepting Gyarados' Hydro Pump. Boom! The collision of water and destruction magic created a massive explosion. The entire area was engulfed in a cloud of mist. When the mist cleared, a crater over 10 meters in diameter was revealed at the center of the explosion. The sheer destructive power shocked Riser's servants. They were already terrified of Gyarados, and now their fear intensified. Even Aoi Kanzaki and Carlamine, who were fighting nearby, had to pause their duel. Saya, however, frowned. She knew the power of Gyarados' Hydro Pump. It could easily level a small hill. Yet, it had been effortlessly blocked. Saa pondered her next move. A close-range assault with Gyarados was risky. They were outnumbered, and if Gyarados was held back, Saya would be in danger. Although Roy was behind her, Saya wanted to prove herself. She couldn't rely on Roy to fight her battles. It seemed she had to resort to a more powerful attack. She had to seize the initiative. Otherwise, who knew what kind of magic Yubaluna might unleash? Koi, use Hyper Beam, Sada commanded decisively. Gyarados, having just evolved, hadn't learned Hyper Beam yet. But they had brought the learning machines from the Pokemon world. Gyarados had learned Hyper Beam in advance. With a roar, Gyarados charged a powerful energy sphere in its mouth. The sphere grew larger and larger, then erupted outwards. A devastating beam of energy shot towards the enemy. Ravel and the others felt a sense of impending doom. If they were hit directly by such a powerful attack, they might die before the subspace could even eject them. Yubaluna reacted quickly, unleashing her full power. A massive magic circle appeared, and a crimson beam of destruction magic collided with Gyarados' Hyper Beam. Explosion magic versus Hyper Beam. Both were incredibly destructive forces. Like a clash of energy beams in Dragon Ball, the two attacks collided in midair. Then, Hyper Beam overpowered the explosion magic and continued towards Yubaluna and the others. Boom! Another earth-shattering explosion erupted. Except for Carmine, all of Riser's remaining servants were caught in the blast. When the smoke cleared, another large crater, even larger than the previous one, was revealed. Yubaluna and Ravel lay at the bottom of the crater, their clothes tattered and their bodies covered in wounds. The other girls were nowhere to be seen. They had been ejected. 1 rook, 1 knight, 1 bishop, and 2 pawns of Riser Phoenix have been defeated, Graphia's voice announced. Gyarados' Hyper Beam had taken out 5 of Riser's servants. It was a testament to the power of that move. Thanks to Yubaluna's desperate defense, the Hyper Beam's power had been significantly weakened. That's why the 5 ejected servants weren't seriously injured. If Yubaluna hadn't been a high-class devil, she would have been ejected as well. And Ravel, with her Phoenix Flames, hadn't been eliminated either. Her flames surged, and her wounds healed in an instant. However, her face was still pale. How is this possible? Carmine stared at Yubaluna in shock. Yubaluna was the strongest among them. Yet, even she couldn't completely withstand the attack of that terrifying familiar. If she hadn't been fighting Aoi Kanzaki on the sidelines, she had no doubt she would have been eliminated as well. Amazing! Aoi gasped, stunned by the destructive power of Gyarados. Koi is so strong. Asia exclaimed, her jaw dropped. Roy wasn't surprised. Despite their seemingly harmless appearance in the anime, Pokemon possessed immense destructive power. In the raiding game arena in the underworld, the audience was stunned by Gyarados' power. I've never seen a dragon like that before. It doesn't seem to be from the Dragon Valley, Surzex Lucifer commented, glancing at Tannen. Indeed, it's not from the Dragon Valley. In fact, it's unlike any known dragon species, Tannen replied, stroking his chin with his massive claw. Tannen was one of the original Dragon Kings. He had voluntarily reincarnated as a devil and established his territory in the region of the underworld where the dragon apples grew. His territory was home to many dragons, and he was an expert on them. Sona was also shocked by Gyarados' power, but her curiosity was piqued. She wondered where Roy had obtained such an unfamiliar familiar. Rias, you must know where Roy acquired that familiar, right? She asked. Rias smiled slyly. If you want to know, Sona, ask Roy yourself. She wouldn't reveal Roy's secrets. Sona sighed and turned her attention to Roy, her curiosity growing. Back in the subspace, Nezuko and Mitsuri suddenly appeared beside Roy, followed by Seiko and the others. The girls stared at the devastation caused by Gyarados, surprised by its power. Even Nezuko and Mitsuri, at their full strength, couldn't cause such destruction. Well, impressive. If I'm not mistaken, you're just a bishop, aren't you? Eubeluna, despite her injuries, managed to stand up. She looked at Saya with defiance, as if victory was still within her grasp. Saya frowned. Yes, I'm a bishop. You're severely injured and have no fighting strength left. Surrender. Ha ha ha. Eubeluna burst into laughter. I am the queen of Riser Phoenix. She took out a small red vial from her bosom, filled with a fiery red liquid. Without hesitation, she uncorked the vial and drank its contents. Her wounds healed at an astonishing speed. Her aura surged, returning to its peak. In the blink of an eye, Eubeluna was fully recovered, as if she had never been injured. Wait, you can use potions in a raiding game? That's cheating! Saya exclaimed, dumbfounded. Humph! This is the Tears of the Phoenix. It can instantly heal any injury. It's a secret treasure of our clan. We can only use up to 2 vials per game, Ravel explained proudly, her fiery wings fluttering. That's not fair. It's against the rules. Rika protested. Humph. You have the twilight healing, Ravel retorted. Rika was speechless. Asia was participating as a bishop. How could she be compared to a mere item? But Rika didn't bother arguing. Don't think you've won just because you've recovered. You're surrounded, Saya declared, crossing her arms. She knew they had the advantage, so she wasn't worried about Eubeluna's underhanded tactics. Your familiar can't unleash that attack again, can it? Eubeluna sneered. Saya glanced at Garridos. It had exhausted itself using Hyper Beam, and couldn't use it again anytime soon. So what? Saya remained confident. Even if Garridos couldn't fight, they still had Nezuko and Mitsuri. Their combined strength was comparable to a high-class devil. The difference in power between middle-class and high-class devils was significant, which was why Eubeluna felt so confident. In her eyes, apart from Garridos, the rest of Roy's peerage were just middle-class devils. She believed she could easily defeat them. Eubeluna smirked and flew into the air. Taste my explosion magic. She waved her hand, and the sky filled with red magic circles of various sizes, radiating destructive energy. Eubeluna intended to wipe out Roy's entire team with a single attack. Roy smirked. Nezuko, Mitsuri, it's your turn, he said calmly. He wasn't planning to intervene. Only those two could handle Eubeluna's full-powered attack. Yes, they both replied, spreading their devil wings. Demonization. Nezuko activated her demon blood art. Her petite form rapidly grew into that of a tall, mature woman. Her clothes, now too small, clung tightly to her curves, accentuating her figure. A complete demon horn emerged from her forehead, and wisteria-like patterns spread across her body. These patterns, far from being unsightly, added an eerie beauty to her appearance. In her fully demonized form, Nezuko possessed the power of a high-class devil. Mitsuri was equally formidable. With a shout, she activated her Demon Slayer mark. A pink, heart-shaped mark appeared on the left side of her neck. With the mark activated, Mitsuri's physical abilities skyrocketed, rivaling a high-class devil. Eubeluna, observing their power from the sky, frowned. She had initially believed that only the Garridos posed a threat. Now, 2 more high-class devil-level combatants had appeared. This complicated things. Her original plan was to eliminate the Garridos first, then use the Tears of the Phoenix to recover and defeat the rest. But Roy's peerage was far stronger than she had anticipated. She was in a difficult situation now, but she had to press on. As Nezuko and Mitsuri charged towards her, Eubeluna waved her hand. The magic circles unleashed a barrage of explosive fireballs. Boom! 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 The sky turned crimson, filled with smoke and explosions. But according to the smoke without damage rule, such attacks wouldn't harm them. Swoosh! Swoosh! Nezuko and Mitsuri emerged from the smoke. Their clothes were slightly disheveled, but they were unharmed. Nezuko's regeneration was incredible. Even if she was injured, she could recover instantly. Moreover, as a rook, her natural defenses were formidable. And Mitsuri's physical resilience was already superhuman, further enhanced by the rook piece she had merged with. Her defense was monstrous. They reached Yubaluna in an instant. Blood Demon Art, Exploding Blood. Love Breathing, 5th Form, Wavering Love, Wildclaw. Nezuko and Mitsuri attacked simultaneously. Nezuko's fist, engulfed in crimson flames, struck Yubaluna. Mitsuri unleashed a flurry of slashes with her sword. Yubaluna barely managed to conjure a defensive magic circle. But it was useless. The magic circle shattered instantly. Nezuko's fist connected, and her blood demon art flames engulfed Yubaluna. Mitsuri's slashes landed, inflicting several deep wounds. Yubaluna, overwhelmed by their combined assault, was sent crashing to the ground like a meteor, creating a cloud of dust. Queen! Yubaluna! Carlamine and Ravel cried out in alarm, witnessing Yubaluna's defeat. They couldn't believe that the powerful Yubaluna had been defeated so swiftly. Riser Phoenix's queen has been eliminated. Graphia's voice echoed through the subspace. Yubaluna, unconscious, dissolved into particles of light and was ejected. The high-class devil, Yubaluna, had been defeated in an instant by the combined might of Nezuko and Mitsuri. Mitsuri is so strong. Shinobu exclaimed in awe. Even among the Hashira, Mitsuri was considered one of the strongest, far surpassing Shinobu. And after becoming a devil, the gap between them had widened even further. Nezuko is amazing too. Kane praised Nezuko, who was more powerful than all of them despite her young age. That wraps up this part of What If Reborn in Highschool DxD as a Lucifuge. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.